That's good.
Hello, and welcome to Jason Cavness Experience. I'm your host, Jason Cavness. The Jason Cavness Experience is brought to you by Cavness HR. At Cavness HR, we deliver HR companies with 49 or fewer people by automating HR while providing you with your very own HR business partner. Our guest today is Efrem of Boon Boona Coffee. Thanks for being here today.
It's a pleasure. Grateful to be here. Yeah, thank you so much. Honored.
And so, you were originally born in a country called Eritrea.
No, so my family is from Eritrea, and so what happened was that as war was intensifying, pretty much in like 75, 76, and such, between Ethiopia and Eritrea, a lot of people were immigrating out or refugees out of those places, and so we were refugees to Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
And I was born in the like our fifth year there.
Oh, so you were born in Saudi
I was
Arabia.
born in Jeddah,
Oh,
Saudi
okay,
Arabia.
okay,
Yeah. And then we made our way to Seattle when I was 5 years old.
okay.
But yeah, my family is from Eritrea. Yeah. Yeah.
So I could be wrong, but
Yeah.
your country is next to Ethiopia, and I think Sudan, right?
Yeah. Ethiopia, Sudan, Djibouti as well. No,
Yeah,
no, no.
yeah, it's right
Yeah. And
there. Yeah,
Djibouti too.
yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So I'm guessing even today it's probably not like people's number one tourist place to go to, right?
Man, it's like this. It's like, it's very beautiful.
Mhm.
You've got high elevation, kind of like, really nice, like almost like think of like San Diego, living in the capital city in Asmara. There's a nice breeze that hits through there, but it's sunny,
Yeah,
70, 80s, like year round almost, and except the rainy season and such. But then you get down to closer to the Red Sea and it drops like elevation, and then it's also super hot. But it is very beautiful though. But yeah, I mean, it's also, got challenges or whatnot, but it is very beautiful though. It is a great,
does any of the
great
stuff going
destination.
on in Sudan and Ethiopia ever like go into that country and like
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
I mean, it's all affected. In a ways, there's no way of not being affected by it because I mean, no different than back when, as I was mentioning, ourselves when we were uh, getting away from the troubles and things were going on. We were leaving Eritrea to get to Sudan, and Sudan, then to Saudi Arabia. And so, yeah, and even right now, there's things going on in Sudan. It's really bad right now. And so there's folks coming into Eritrea. And so there's always that kind of like, movement between them. But yeah, it's the tough part about it.
yeah. So obviously I'm not asking you how to fix a problem, but like what would your advice for how to fix the regions? Because it's like since I've been born, this stuff been going on in the air, like either like food famines or wars or civil wars.
Yeah.
It's like the air can never get a break, unfortunately.
I mean, I think definitely it is true. It is challenged. There are challenges for sure. And sometimes it's at peak levels where it's, yeah, a significant amount of death, starvation, and things like that for sure, between war and famine and other factors for sure. And so it's definitely had that. I think that, what happens so often though, I think is that a lot of the attention becomes that, especially from a media, Western media, where it's like, oh, there's, a war breaking out or there's this. True, those things are happening, but I think that so much of the narrative has become that you don't see any of the other good stuff that are going on within those areas because, as well as like, I mean, nowhere, everywhere else in the world, like, I mean, right. If I had solutions for us here, I'd be like, yo, like, let's fix the things here too. And so it kind of becomes that. But I think what happens is that, kind of just be, to an extent, right, with the continent of Africa, with, you know, East Africa, a lot of it falls to famine. A lot of it is based off of just a few kind of talking points or pieces that are known, but it doesn't go into the depths of things as well. And I think that's a little bit of a disservice, but um, you know, solutions, I don't know. That's the short answer is I don't know, but I think that also, I think they're like, can you travel to these places? For sure you can.
So you can?
Yeah, yeah.
No, no.
I think yes.
I thought there'd be like some kind of U.S. State Department, don't
There,
go here.
I assume there probably is. I think there probably is. But you can still,
Yeah,
and people do come having good experiences there. I mean, it's definitely like you just have to be thoughtful about where you're going.
yeah.
Thoughtful about what you're looking to do while there, for an enriching experience into culture and history, you're gonna get that for sure in any of these places. Um, but I think that, also being okay, hey, may not be safe to go to this region or to that place or this. Yeah, this is no different than what we would do probably here, right?
Mhm.
Right? It's
Yeah,
it's
you probably
here.
won't be in the south side of Chicago at 2 in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, it's things like that. It's like, okay, there's things that we would know. It's like, all right, you don't go to that particular neighborhood at that time. And so it's like, all right, it's things like that. It's just kind of natural, kind of just safety
Common
things,
sense stuff.
common sense
Yeah.
stuff. But like you could definitely go. Actually, I shouldn't say definitely. I mean, it depends on things too. You got to get a visa. You got to get,
Yeah. Just
approval
can't
and
get on a
things like
plane and
that.
go over
It's
there.
uh, sometimes it's kind of tricky.
Yeah.
It is. It depends on where and your purpose and things like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, it is though for the majority, I'd say it is a doable thing.
All right. So
Yeah,
so next talk about this. Again, you might not have the answer, but I think a lot of people in America, they think of Africa, right? They think of Africa one big homogeneous
yeah,
organization, but it's actually like what 70, 80 countries. Each country has a different culture, like West Africa, different East Africa.
yeah,
South Africa is probably way different from Libya.
yeah.
Can you give a quick overview of like how diverse and how different Africa is?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think that, it is. And I think where you started off with it is exactly it. Just spoke to. But yeah, Africa is sometimes just referred to as a country. It's a continent. And in that continent, there are many countries, 50 plus. And within each of those countries, many languages are spoken. Within those countries, many religions are practiced. And they all have unique histories that predate colonial rule and just experiences. And it's very yeah, it's there's a lot there, and I think that sometimes you know this kind of goes back to painting a picture, right? You want to paint a picture and kind of keep it simplified and say like, Africa is where you go for safaris. Well, yeah, that is available, but there's a lot more. And in Africa, we don't just speak African, or that's not a language. In Africa, there's many languages spoken and many traditions and cultures, and um, it's really diverse in that. It, in Ethiopia and Eritrea and East Africa, many languages spoken, many tribes, many cultures, some that even cross borders. So the borders are somewhat of a weird, like, kind of common day representation of things, but that's the case across the continent. But it is very, very diverse. And to think about, several thousands of years of history there, it's sometimes just kind of glossed over, not even recognized. And I think that shows up, even today and still how it's spoken of. I think that there's hopefully opportunity for that narrative for the West to hopefully kind of like go a little deeper. And I think that um, there's there's just so much. There's so much more than just safari. There's the people, of course. There's all that history I was talking about. But then even the land, the countries, and how beautiful they are. Most people think it's just dry and arid, and it's not. You can definitely get some of the best mangoes and avocados ever in Ethiopia. And it's very lush. Depending on where you're going, of course, the Sahara is dry and sandy, but that's beautiful in its own way as well too. And so each place has just this unique history that requires its own diving into. And there's plenty of books. There's plenty of uh, documentaries to dive into more. Most recently, and the one that I love and I go to often is a professor and Dr. Henry Louis Gates, and the work that he's done, and the documentaries and the books that he's written about African history and even African American history here in the experience of the slave trade. And he's done a lot. Dr. Henry Gates is definitely a one that I look to for a lot of great material. But there's many more. Yeah.
So I recently learned this. I don't think most people don't know this. But I recently learned that Maine is the closest place in the United States to Africa, right? And that
Yeah.
kind of blew me. I always thought like Florida or maybe it's
But
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
South Carolina. I had no idea it was Maine, right?
That's interesting. Yeah, I think yeah, the way I'd imagine the positioning would
Yeah.
be like a little bit further. Yeah, right.
And maps are so messed up, right? Because you look at a map, Africa looks like the size of the country, and you have like Greenland, like looks like this big ass thing, right? And
Yeah,
actually, like Africa is so big
yeah.
compared to other places.
Yeah, I think it's the proportions of kind of how they drew
Yeah, they
like
did it.
the
Yeah,
map, and I don't know. I think there's some reasoning maybe, unless it was just to market it as like
yeah,
Africa's just the small thing.
yeah,
But I thought that there was like something behind that, but it does definitely paint a very false perception of what Africa
yeah.
looks like. Yeah,
And so, does the country of Eritrea have its own language?
yeah, yeah. In Eritrea, there's a what is it? I think it's there's nine tribes, and I think eight or nine. I think
Okay,
each tribe may have their own. For the most part, there's maybe slight variations between them. Most part, they're Semitic languages, so have a long history there. So it's kind of in the family of Arabic and Hebrew and stuff,
okay.
but different influences based off the tribe and where they're positioned at. But yeah, many languages spoken. I only speak one of the eight or so that are
Okay.
there. Yeah, but
So, is it like a Islamic country, Christian country? What's the predominant religion there?
yeah, so Eritrea is about 50-50.
Okay,
And the kind of the history behind that is that you know, so what was it? There's some practice of Judaism that existed there, but then about 380 basically is when Christianity came into East Africa through Eritrea and Ethiopia and uh, and in Egypt. Egypt had it a little bit before as well, and that religion is known as Orthodox Christianity, and it's still in practice today. That's the majority of the Christianity is that Orthodox Christianity, and they're either referred to as Ethiopian Orthodox, Eritrean Orthodox, Coptic Orthodox, which is in Egypt. And so you have predominantly that within the Christianity side of it in Eritrea, but then Islam came a few hundred years afterwards and also grew in prominence as well. And so now it's about a good even 50-50 split between both in Eritrea.
yeah. So,
And for the most part, Ethiopia too, to an extent.
do you happen to know why your parents chose Saudi Arabia to go to versus all the other countries they could have went to?
A lot of it was just really, I think, just timing and where, Saudi Arabia is directly across the Red Sea from Eritrea, so it's proximity as well. And then my dad was able to kind of, start working, get a job, and he worked for Saudi Airlines for a number of years.
And
Um,
what did your dad do?
he was a mechanical engineer, so he was kind of more on the tech side of things on the airplanes for Saudi Airlines, and then that led to an opportunity to go to work for Boeing.
And do you have any memories of growing up in Saudi Arabia?
Uh, Light. I mean, it's very small.
So
It's
you're
we
just
have
only there a
5 years
couple.
old.
You're only there a couple of years, right?
Yeah, I was there, 5 years old and approaching close to six,
Okay.
probably. So it's very faint. And,
Okay.
I think it was like preschool and kindergarten. Maybe his exposure is about that. So I think to the extent that this is very, it's like these light things,
Yeah.
it's like,
So then y'all come to Seattle, correct?
yeah, we came to
Um,
Seattle.
you're probably too young for this question, but how was it as far as like the culture shock, like going from Saudi Arabia to the United States, being like an immigrant? Can you talk about that culture shock, so to speak, or what your parents might have to go through?
Yeah, I think that, at least for myself, it was more of like, oh, he's African. I think Uh, it's just kind of like the stereotypes of that, but we were, I'd say that, between the language, we didn't struggle really with because we were speaking English to begin with when we were in Saudi Arabia, even though we were speaking also
Yeah,
Tigrinya,
I'm
which is an
presuming on
English
Obama,
channel.
your dad had pretty good paying job versus a lot of immigrants coming that got like wash dishes or fast food or do like illegal alien stuff. I'm guessing your dad had like a decent paycheck coming in.
Well, yeah, he definitely had we were much more fortunate for sure. He had that experience and, it allowed for us to be able to kind of live and get exposure to, an American school basically while we were in Saudi Arabia. And even though I only went for so long, it was still early in the thing. It was still early in it, and so um, yeah. But for us, for me at least, getting to America and assimilating, it didn't really take that much because I was so familiar with it already.
And did you grow up in Seattle or one of the towns around Seattle?
No, I grew up in Seattle.
Seattle, okay.
Yeah, Seattle proper. Yeah, yeah, West Seattle area.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you had, like for a better term, the typical, stereotypical American child growing up, so to speak.
Yeah, for the most part, I mean, we got a little bit of exposure to kind of the both sides of like, American culture, but then we were still very much rooted in the traditions of Eritrea and East Africa. And so, we would go to whether it's service, or there's classes on how to speak Tigrinya, how to read and write in Tigrinya. And Tigrinya is like the probably the most dominant language in Eritrea. And so, as kids, we would speak it in the house, but then practicing how to read and write it and stuff, there was like there was school for that. And so I was exposed to kind of both sides of it. And in our household, our family's big. And so, you're around it a lot, around your culture a lot. So it was both things simultaneously, I'd say. But obviously one's a little bit more dominant and you're kind of chasing after one a little bit more than the other. And so yeah, it was good exposure between both things. And I think it's probably best of both worlds, probably.
So it seems like I'm just doing generalities here. Like seeing a lot of American kids, like, they pretty much do what they want to, sort of kind of where if you're immigrant, your parents are like, you better make it A. You
Yeah.
better do this. Like they like drive you almost like too much drive, right?
Yeah.
Was that your experience?
I would definitely say that, yeah, there's that for sure. Like, there's this expectation, like, hey, it took a lot for me to get you here. Don't, you better get to work, And so there's this expectation, do well in school. And I'd say that's where my dad was really, focused on was like, hey, make sure you're getting your school work done and that you're paying attention and doing well there. And he'd be like, I want you to become an engineer, and you're gonna become an engineer like myself and things like that. And so there was that desire for sure. And I would say that to an extent definitely benefited from that as well. At the time, you're like kind of pushing back and like, nah, don't enjoy math and science, and I'm not gonna necessarily do that. But it's you look back, you're like, I could the value in that is definitely key.
And
Definitely
did you
see
have
that.
kids yourself?
Yeah, just we've got a little one now.
So
Yeah.
do you think you're gonna be like, are you gonna do one or two? Are you gonna be number one, like treat your kid like your dad treated you, be really driven, or like, hey, I'm not gonna do that driven driving and stuff. I'm just gonna like give him the opportunities that you can get, right? Like how are you gonna approach that?
I mean, I'm still figuring it out as I, kind of just starting that path. The little one's only 10 months, so I've got some time a little bit. But I think that there's definitely a balance to it all. And I think that, I think where my dad was coming from, definitely experienced hardship, experienced a lot of rough he's seen it. He's seen it. And so has my mother. And so they recognize what they've been through and what they've had to experience. And therefore, there's this expectation. And also, it's like, hey, we want you to do well. We want you to succeed here and things like that. But to an extent, you definitely want the same things for your child in the sense like you want them to do well, but there's also a little bit of like, okay, how do you lead them in that direction? And I think that that's a dance that you kind of do as your child kind of grows and develops, and you're aware of things that they enjoy and that they're kind of like drawn to, and showing them and giving them experiences in that space so that they can determine for themselves, hey, is this something that you're truly passionate about? Or is this just like something that you're just excited about right now? And then, maybe it changes, which is fine. But I think it's allowing them that space, and not predetermining like, yo, engineer, that's it.
So it's not gonna be like the kid be 6 years old. Hey kid, come to the coffee shop. You're gonna be a barista for the day.
No, I mean, if the, kid is going to probably have to like, I'll be honest, I'd probably say that, I'm going to, before that day even comes, they should be doing something.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna just be like all of a sudden 16 years old, come and start
Mhm.
working. No. And then it'd be you can come, help me out. Like, hey, I need to go take out the garbage at the cafe.
Yeah.
Come with me.
Yeah.
And it's just walking with me, even
Mhm.
like they ain't got to carry it necessarily if they're, 10 years old or whatnot, but
Yeah.
it's to be aware of that work. And I think that one other thing that my dad and my mom, both of them really pushed on was like, if you want, you go work, go put that work in. And so from a young age, it was, go do some yard work, you know, figure it out. You want a bike? All right, we'll go half on it,
Mhm.
mow a few lawns, and we'll give you the gas for it, which is a privilege,
Yeah.
right? And then they're like, but whatever you earn, you can use that to go get that thing that you want. You want a haircut? You want to look good? You want those new shoes? Then you can put up on that stuff. And so I think that was super beneficial.
I saw this meme somewhere recently. It said the question was, tell me what type of allowance, how much you got for your allowance. Someone put, my allowance was I was allowed to live in the house.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I was ever given a never, it was laughable.
Yeah, I
It
was
was
allowed to
laughable.
live here. Yeah.
Yeah. It was laughable to have an allowance. No, you've got garbage to take out. You got yard work to do, yeah, let's go. Help me change the oil, do this and that, whatever. You're going to be doing this.
Have you ever thought about this? So, from my point of view, like you're an entrepreneur, your kids gonna have such advantage by having an entrepreneur as a parent, right? Versus like someone works 9 to 5. Right? Have you thought about the lessons you can give your kids as far as like being an entrepreneur and all that kind of stuff?
You know, I would say that there's an advantage and a disadvantage too, because I mean, I think that as an entrepreneur too, like you're also, a lot of entrepreneurs don't get to spend a lot of time with their family too. Sometimes, depending on how where you're at, what the structure is of your thing. Um, and so I think that, you know, there's advantages and disadvantages from the most important thing and resource that the child needs, which is time. And so even in a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, you may actually have more time with your kids than someone who is an entrepreneur who's working the weekends or working off hours, doing all this craziness to try keeping the business afloat. So there's that piece. But the most important thing that I think to provide a child is time and to give them as much of that as possible. And if fortunate enough to allow that entrepreneurship kind of like journey allows for you to be able to do that, great. You know, um, that's so that's the most important. And then I would say that for the child, then I would say that it's exposing them, getting them exposed uh to that thing, to work, what it is that I do and how I make decisions, or uh, what decisions somebody else is doing in a field that they have an interest in, and how they go about it. And so exposing them to that. Um, when I was younger, I had at the YMCA in the CD, there was a program called Black Achievers, and it was on Saturday mornings for a period of a few hours. It was probably like 2, 3 hours or so. Um, and I remember that like with that program, we would go to different places of business where folks would come in and speak to us, and it provided a little window into what it's like to be a lawyer, what it's like to be HR leadership, what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And I think that really helps because it takes it away from just like theoretical, just kind of talking about things and actually seeing somebody in that space. Um, s- super. I mean, for me at least, I enjoyed seeing somebody do the thing than I did reading about the thing. And so exposure, exposure, however it comes. Yeah.
So let's talk about immigration real fast, right? Of
Mm,
course, this is your opinion, right?
mm.
So your parents came over as illegal immigrants. What's your take when you hear like, at the southern border, all these illegal immigrants coming over? Are you like, because some people have the opinion, it doesn't matter if you're legal, come to America, do your best, like do the best you can. You come over because better be a better life. Or are you more like, hey, my parents did it the right way. These people are fucking up the system. This isn't fair. What's your take on those two? Is it a combination of both or what?
Yeah. I mean, I think about it from this side, you know, as people were trying to find the place where in the world where we're going to be able to have peace and to be able to make a living for ourselves and and to see that kind of just for the next generation as well. That's that's bare minimum. And so I'm familiar with what it's like to be, yeah, true. Even though I'm second generation, really almost, I'm a little removed from what my parents had to experience and what they went through. Um, but I have cousins who are, walking through the Sinai Peninsula, walking through the Sahara Desert to get to Libya, to cross a boat to get into Europe, or trying to make it into Brazil to make it up to the border here. So I'm familiar with all sides of it, and it's hard. It's hard, and their determination is definitely something that is like amazing to me. But I also know the level of privilege and opportunity that I've been granted by being here, the way that I was fortunate enough to be here. I can't blame them. I can't knock them for what it is that they're seeking out. I know that for myself. I need to do on their behalf though. I need to show up because what I've gotten, if I'm not paying it forward or doing something to acknowledge the position or where it is that I've gotten to, all these fortunate means, all this support that I've gotten, then I'm doing a disservice for all my cousins and brothers and sisters and others in general, just that are struggling to make it to that place of peace and be able to have make a living, and to be able to survive. So I can't knock that journey, and I can't knock. I could only say that it's the same thing that we would wish for everybody else. Um, and how that happens is, it's a challenging situation right now, across the board. But you know, I'm on the side of like wanting to see them be in a better place.
My thing is this: like, when the day comes when no one wants to come to America, that's the day we were like pretty like gonna stop being a good country, right? I think it's a good thing all these people want to come here, right? And you think about it, like people say no more immigrants, whatever. Like, I'm not picking no fucking strawberries. No, I'm not doing all this, manual
Hmm.
labor, right? No American
Yeah.
wants to do it, right? We need legal. We need immigrants, right? I think every country does, right?
Yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt.
I
I
know
mean,
bad people coming
and
over, of
especially if
course.
you're looking at like, I mean, one, it's just a necessity, one from the side of them just trying to get to a place where there is peace
Yeah,
and be able to,
and
once
most
again,
immigrants
those
are so
things.
like so driven, right?
Exactly.
Like most entrepreneurs are immigrants,
Exactly. They are driven to for those things, for peace, prosperity, and to be able to see that for the next generation. That's the bare minimum. That's what they're seeking out. That's the majority. Um, and and if you're even looking at it from the side of like, no immigration, like that's wild. I mean, if you look at the rate of which we're producing at, it's only
Yeah,
dropping.
yeah,
But in general, though, like what they're seeking for is to only for the majority, I'd say, is going to be for something that's going to be better. It's the same
yeah.
thing that we came here.
Like you said, if some mother walked from, I don't know, Colombia or Venezuela by herself with 3 kids and walked all the way, like damn, like that's like you said, it's driven and like focused and like
It's incredible. I mean, and it's unfortunate, but it's incredible, the determination. But it's unfortunate about the situation for sure. And you can even look at things that are happening inside the countries wherever they're uh, leaving,
yeah,
and talk about that for sure. But you know, what we have here is definitely better than anywhere else I've seen.
yeah.
And very fortunate. So then, you know, in this position of, you know, in this great opportunity that we've been granted, I think it comes back to then also what are you doing within it? Um, and what are you going to do for that community that's coming here? How are you going to support? And what that you would only want the same thing for yourself?
Yeah, too many Americans take all this stuff for granted, right? They live in a little bubble, they don't have a clue what's going on in the world, other people's sufferings.
Yeah, we're very fortunate here, very fortunate, and I understand. I understand why folks want to make it here.
And so you went back to your dad's country in 2011.
Yeah,
Was that your
yep.
first time going there?
No, that was my second time.
Second time, okay.
Hmm.
What year did you go the first time?
In 99.
Okay. And
Yeah.
you were a teenager or
Yeah, I was 17 at the time.
okay?
Yeah, and
It
so
was
I
like
was
a
there.
family trip or something? Or,
Yeah, it was. It was a family trip. It was actually for the passing of my father at the time.
okay.
And so in 99 we went for that. And so it was a month. It was my senior year of high school pretty much. And so that was very brief. Um, but it was when I came back in 2011 that I got to spend 3 months in
And
Eritrea.
what was the purpose of that the 2011 trip?
Shoot,
Just to go.
burnout. It
Yeah.
was a form of saying, I need to refocus my attention on things that are important to me. And so in 2000, 2008 through 2010, it was the financial crisis here. And, um, I always say I was very fortunate to have had a job during that time.
Mhm.
Many people were getting laid off at that time. And, I did have a job, but I was working really, really hard. And I was burnt out. And so by 2010, I was like, I need to take a break. And I was in my, mid to late 20s. And so I said, let me look to hit the pause button on my career for a quick second and go travel for a sec. And then that's what started it pretty much.
And that's where you got the coffee bug, so to speak.
The coffee bug was there. It wasn't what I went there for. Uh I had gone there really all of my travels then. It was really just kind of like really learn about my history, learn about culture, um, spend more time, family, understand the the trials and tribulations of being a refugee, and hearing it directly from folks. Uh, and and in that time, as I would walk around the city, as I would walk around, spend time in my village, and um, you know, I just it just naturally started happening. And what it was is like a little bit of history here, but it's like Eritrea was colonized by Italy, and so there's a period of about 50 years, starting in the late 1800s, that it was colonized. And so, um, there's a lot of cafes inside the city, but the coffee culture there is different than that of you know uh, what we're familiar with here. It's much more communal. You're spending a lot of your day inside there. Um, there's sometimes billiards being played, pools played, and such. And so it's a really a relaxing little hub, and it's where yeah, just pretty much the community gathers at. Um, but there's also very much a traditional side to coffee too, in East Africa that starts in Ethiopia. And Ethiopia is the birthplace of coffee. The word coffee itself comes from a region in Ethiopia called Kaffa. And it's about 1,000 years since it was first found, roughly. And there's a cute story of a goat herder who finds it.
Yeah, I was asking the story for you. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
so
asking that. Yeah, I've heard that story. The goat herders found it. They were
the
tired. The
yeah,
goats got hyped up. Yeah.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So yeah, no, definitely happy to share that. But to kind of get to the root of it though, where I found it, but it was both this like kind of traditional side and contemporary side of coffee consumption that I was seeing. And I was starting to think about, on this trip, how do I do something where I can bridge both places? You know, I love, my African culture. I love the people. I love the opportunity that exists to tell that story, that narrative that has been, told in different ways that, of Africa, but to kind of take it a little differently and dive deeper and to show, you know, this is a producer and this producer has, this much land, has produced this incredible coffee, and this is why we support them, and this is how we support them. And we've chosen to bring that particular coffee here to Seattle or to Renton, more specifically, and want to roast it and serve it up to you. We want to tell that story. And we want to create a commerce between the two places. So because I have my attachment to selfishly to the continent of Africa, and because I wanted to do something, you know, you see hardship, you're like, what are you gonna do? You know, you're gonna hear about somebody's struggle. What are you gonna do? And of course, it's not like the hero mentality of like, yo, I'm gonna be able to save her. But no, no, no. It's the reality of like, okay, well, maybe take something that you're passionate about and do something within it. And coffee just became that place of it. So it's like I can do something where I can spotlight the producer.
Were you already a coffee drinker this time?
Hmm?
Were you already a big coffee drinker before this?
No, I was just starting really.
Okay.
I was drinking coffee a little bit more frequently, like, but it would be like, you know, caramel lattes and things like that. It
Okay.
was very sweet
Okay.
and
All right.
nothing against that, but it was just like my start into it was kind of like that way.
Okay.
And even the traditional coffee, like I wouldn't join that often in the traditional coffee ceremony all that much. And it became something only as time went on. Um, I mean, I would dabble a little bit, like, you know, my mom would roast freshly, you know, fresh coffee and brew it. And like, yeah, sure, let me drink some with you. But that was like after college, pretty much. And it was just on occasion. And so my coffee consumption wasn't really, it wasn't as, I didn't dive as deep until after my trip, really.
Okay.
And so, you know, that's where it was all just starting to bubble up was when I was there in Eritrea. It was just starting to come together. It's like, you know, how can you do it? And all these thoughts were running through my mind of like, you know, intentionality, focus on the continent of Africa, focus on the producers. But then, you know, I want to bridge that with where I grew up, Seattle. And true, yeah, Seattle's, you know,
It's a
coffee
major
capital,
major
it's a
coffee
major
place.
coffee
Yeah.
hub and all that stuff for sure. You know, to think that, you know, I'm going to survive as a coffee business inside of this is,
I'm pretty sure a lot of people told you
it's
how
like,
you
yeah,
doing. Like
yeah,
Efrem, there's like 10,000 coffee shops every corner. Like, what chance do
exactly.
you have?
Nah, for sure. And definitely understand that, you know, but it was like, nah, I want to do it differently. I want to see how I can, how I can do this in a way where I'm not just going to be taking advantage of producers. Like, I don't want to go about it that way. I want to highlight the content. I want to highlight the producers. I want to do something locally as well. So that was the start of it all. That was it. That's the genesis of it all. And then my appetite for coffee continued to grow. Um, and honestly, even there, really, like, I mean, I would go intentionally to the cafes and drink the cappuccinos and macchiatos. And so I was getting familiar with like drinking espresso and just a little bit of milk there, which, like I was saying, you know, I was more the give me the sweetest drink with coffee, a hint of coffee in it,
Yeah.
was my experience prior to that. And so that's kind of where it all started from.
So I definitely want to go back to do like a deep dive on coffee. But first, talk about the process of figuring out like how to import export stuff from Africa, United States. So is that a hard process? You get a lot of I don't know paperwork done. Like how does that work?
Yeah, at the beginning, no, it wasn't that much of a lift. So, you know, when I came back from my trip, really, I was like, I want to work on this plan for it. And so I started working on like what would I need to do and how would I do it and what would need to happen, all this stuff. Um, and quickly found out that, you know, nobody was going to help me. Like the banks were like, what the heck? What are you talking about? We're not doing this. We're not supporting this. And it's for the reason is like, you know, why? Like, who cares about the fact that coffee came from like, you know, traditional coffee ceremony? What? Like, who cares? And so there was this like immediate no to it. And so I said, all right, you know, how are you gonna go about it, Efrem? And so I was like, well, you know, first things first, let me start with the source. And I have family in Ethiopia. So I just picked up the phone, reached out to them, like, where do you get coffee from? And they're like, oh, you know, so and so, you know, has coffee. He's an importer, an exporter. You know, it's very common. And so, because out of Ethiopia, I think it's the number two most moved uh, crop out of Ethiopia. Number one or number two. Um, so there's many people in coffee there. And so got me in touch. And I think the first one I reached out to was like the Sadamo Co-op or something. And that's kind of how it started. It was just, it wasn't, it was a small amount. It wasn't, they could just ship that through
Yeah.
DHL, and I was able to have a little bit of coffee to play with, and that's where it started. And I spent most of that year just playing with coffee.
And do you source your coffee from the same place all the time? Do you have different sources?
We try keeping it as we moved, like it was like, okay, understanding who are better partners and understanding how their methods work and what they're doing was the driver. And so now we've gotten to a place where, yes, that's a trusted source. That's a good person. We like when we buy from Burundi, we're only buying from this organization, these folks. When we buy coffee from Uganda, it's only going to be from here. So we do that, but that took a while to get to
And
that
how
place
long
of
does it take
actually.
you to build a trust in that person? Like, what's the process? Like, post a farmer from, I don't know, Uganda contacts you out of the blue. Hey, I like what you're doing. I want to sell coffee to you. Like, what's the process for you? Like, a couple months, a year? Like, how's that work?
Usually it takes some time. You really want to know how they're going about it, what they're doing there. Um, they're more than likely not going to be just one person producing coffee. It's not in most of the continent of Africa. There's not one person that owns all this land that is producing. It's very communal, and so a lot of it is like, oh, the community, or this particular area is harvesting, and then they bring it all, and so it's like kind of more co-op approach, and so that's kind of how, and so you've learned more about kind of who's involved, what the structure is inside there, how do they get paid, how long has it been established, um, and it takes time. It takes time, and each one is pretty unique and different. Definitely many different examples I can kind of give where it's been new approach or new organization, new gathering of people, and then there's some that have been very long established. Some of them are where, it's one person who is leading it for the country almost. And that person is helped establish things inside there. And now there are many different producers who are bringing it in and, getting it processed and it's moving out. So there's many different approaches to it. And really it's based off of, yeah, conversations, based off of uh, asking around, asking who do you do business with now? What's it been like with them, and asking them, hey, how is it buying from them? And you just ask as much as possible. And then you visit as well.
So I know all your coffee comes from East Africa, but have you ever opened like maybe in coffee for like maybe Indonesia or non-East African country, or the goal is just only get it from East Africa?
So we actually get from all over the continent of Africa. So anyone that's producing coffee in on the continent of Africa is who we're wanting to purchase
Okay.
from. And right now, the reason, for the most part is that, like I said, at the beginning, it was really, I was tired of the narrative. I was tired of the lack of um, focus on just African producers and the history, the experience, and what it provides buying and being familiar with like Congo, being familiar with, you know, Cameroon as a country instead of it just being glossed over as just the continent of Africa and just from Africa. So kind of being a little bit more specific about it. And so, and then also livelihood, leaving there, if I'm purchasing, I want to see it go there, because it's also, yes, I'm from there, but then two, it's also where the most need is. There's so much need. I'd also say another factor is that, we become subject matter experts of things that are going on. So by focusing on just the continent of Africa, we can then say, okay, hey, we're familiar of like, oh, there's new developments happening in, such and such. Malawi is now getting in or doing this and that, or there's a new harvesting or new processing approach being applied in Ethiopia, or this, just the different nuances and things that happen in a place as vast as the continent of Africa, and with, many different, regions that are producing coffee, many different flavors of coffee. There's so much to do there that it's like it's plenty, and we're still not subject matter experts, but we are probably one of the primary ones that are focused on just the continent. And true, yeah, we love Colombian coffee. We love coffee from, Indonesia, and you know Chinese coffee, Mexican coffee. delicious coffees. So we'll play with it and drink it and
Yeah.
enjoy it. But I think that, for the time being, we want to see the impact and see the some progress
Have you ever
in the
tried
coffee.
Cuban coffee?
Like just like Cuban.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I've tried it. Yeah, for sure. It's
It's,
delicious.
it's really good. I've never, everyone like
Oh
swears
yeah.
it's like they're like really good.
Yeah, I mean, I got to try it when I was in Miami a few times. I kept
Okay.
like seeking it out, and I would go and have it. It was delicious. It's really good.
Okay.
You know, I definitely enjoy stronger cups sometimes and just
Yeah.
different experiences within
Yeah.
coffee. Oh, sign me up for it. We have um we've had some friends who have done the traditional kind of like Vietnamese coffee for us as well,
Yeah.
or like Egyptian style coffee where they're adding cardamom or rose water or saffron to the coffee. That stuff is
Yeah.
that's an experience.
I was in Vietnam for 10 days of September visiting for friends.
Hmm.
Oh man, that coffee is so good. It's like, yeah, it's good. Coconut coffee, all the ice milk coffee, all the stuff they have, yes, good.
Yeah.
And then in the army, I was in Italy for 2 years, right? In
Uh,
Vincennes, Italy. And of course, all the espresso, the coffee culture,
yeah.
right? And there's a thing I was addicted to. It's called Cafe Correcto de Grappa, right? A little small espresso and put a sort of grappa. So,
Oh, okay, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, grappa is delicious
yeah.
too. Yeah, think about it with the
Yeah.
coffee. Yeah, that's
I
nice.
was so addicted to that shit. Like, yeah, it was really good.
That sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I mean, and that's the thing too. Like, if you're a coffee nerd, you're gonna just you want to try it all. You want to experience it all. And so there's no wrong way of having it for the most part.
No.
I've even had um, what is it? I always forget the name of the little kind of cat looking
I know
thing.
you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, but it digests it and then
Yeah.
it
Here's a question
poops it
for you.
out.
So, like, feel like everyone in the world drinks coffee, right?
Mm.
Like coffee everywhere, right? Is there any risk of coffee going out or like being like no more? Like, they're talking about the oceans, all the fish going away, or coffee is maybe just got to grow some more. Coffee is never going to go like
Mhm.
out the be gone, so to speak.
Um, I think that it's probably gonna change. And so there is a reality that, like, yeah, when it comes to different species or types of coffee, there are ones that are gonna potentially fade away. And so you have Arabica, you have Robusta, and there's one or two other smaller ones, but those are the two dominant types of coffees in the world. And so Arabica is, it's the stuff that you're probably drinking more frequently. It tastes better. I'm a little biased, but it tastes better. Um, it's um, it's got more nuance within it. It's also very sensitive. And so viruses get little bugs on it and create defects and things like potato defects and things like that. But so that one is probably likely leaving us. I can't say soon, but I don't know what the timeline is, but it's not looking too good for it. It's just much more susceptible to things. But it's what we drink. The majority of our coffee is that. The other one is Robusta. Robusta, grows very abundantly. It's much more resilient. And it's it isn't as tasty, but
There's like a
it
rough,
has
rough
has a
taste
little.
to it, kind of harsh.
What is it like? It's a different taste altogether. Like there's a flavor that like on the mouth that tastes distinctively different, and I don't know how to best place it as what it is that you'll taste, but it's a very clear difference between the two. Um, it is definitely higher in caffeine than Arabica, um, but the flavor on it stands out in kind of a very much like, hey, you're having coffee,
Okay.
but it's a different taste profile, and I'm just losing it on words as to best describe the flavor notes that represent Robusta, but it's there's a body to it that's very different. And there's a kind of aftertaste that hits that's also different. And I just don't know how to best kind of like
No worries.
kind of speak to what that is. We try it and we do drink it often, and we are thinking about how do we look to combine or to to start utilizing Robusta because it is going to be the way we're going to be leaning more um, as time goes on. But yeah, so there are changes within coffee. The coffee prices fluctuate every day. It's a commodity. It moves. And there's sometimes a scarcity thing. Or there's an abundance. No different than any other crop, oranges, grapes, whatever. And so it does experience that stuff, but then also there is kind of like a move towards like it may not be here. That type might not be here for
Okay.
too much longer. And the other types of coffee is probably what we'll be consuming.
So how hard or easy is it to grow coffee? And like how long does it take? Like you plant the coffee plant, like how long does it take for you can like, um, take the seeds and make coffee? Like how's that work?
Yeah, I mean, the tree can grow, but until you get probably like fruits out of it, it's probably like minimum 3 years or so to get to that place. But you know, uh, and it also requires it to be in a certain part of the world.
I'm guessing
Uh,
you can't grow it in like Alaska or Canada, right?
yeah, you probably can't do that. I mean, we have some coffee trees in our cafe. They're not doing too well. They're not doing too well. But it just depends on where you're at, how you're growing it, what types you're using. But you know, um, it's it takes time. It takes time for sure.
So I know you said, people should drink coffee how they want, but do some people like who drink like we'll say coffee black, right? They look down. I'm drinking my coffee black. You're not drinking coffee. You're drinking milk and candy. What are you doing? Are you ruining the coffee, right? Anything like that, or
I
just
mean,
drink coffee
I
how you like it?
I believe you enjoy coffee however you like it.
Hmm.
So, for example, like what was it? Just yesterday, I think I got me a butterscotch latte. I saw butterscotch.
Butterscotch.
I was like, oh, let me try that. I was at a different shop. I was like, oh, that sounds good. Let me try that. But yeah, so you have it however you like it.
Yeah.
And most of the times when, someone comes to the cafe and, they're asking, hey, what's good here? Like, well, what do you typically, my question back is
Yeah.
like, what do you typically drink for
Mhm.
coffee? And they're like, oh, I love like a vanilla latte. Like, all right, try our vanilla latte
Yeah.
then. We make the vanilla in house and, this and that. And we use this espresso and try and see if, do just comparisons and, see what you like. So there is that. And then sometimes, for someone who's like, oh, I love, very dark and have, dark coffees and such. And I just like a black. Like, all right, definitely, um, can I have you sample our drip, our black coffee, which we rotate. And so it's like, yeah, sure. Gonna hurt nobody to have a sample and they'll taste it and they'll be like, oh, that's fruity or that's sweeter than what I'm accustomed to. And, they may commit to like a cup or whatnot. And then that becomes an opportunity for someone who may have always traditionally just been, on that dark roast profile or maybe or whatever, to try something a little different. Or someone who does typically get the butterscotch lattes and to try it just black and be like, yeah, you know, so there's these nuances, there's these flavors, but what do you experience? What do you like about it? Do you like it? Just having it black and you just give them a sample, let them try it. And I think that it's kind of more, it would try avoiding judging folks, nobody wants that. But if you can kind of just like, meet them where they're at and try, try leading them into like a place where it's like, try something different. If willing, if you're like, no, then no problem. We'll get whatever you want. But, maybe provide a little bit of context as to what it is and why, you're offering that. I think that's a fun way of going about it. And it kind of gets out of the coffee snob space. And I always like to talk about it as a coffee nerd, and it's more of like, yeah, we geek out on coffee. That's it.
Does the name of your company have any significance or is it just a name?
Well, no, it definitely has significance. The words boon or bunna are words that mean coffee, basically, but out of East Africa. So boon is more common in Eritrea, parts of Sudan, even parts of Kenya will use the word boon. And bunna is more common in Ethiopia. And so Boon Boona Coffee is just coffee, 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 but it's in three languages to pay its respect as to where it comes from, and provide a little bit more context on it. And so that's where the name came from. And honestly, I struggled with what the name should be for it when I was first getting started. And after a while, my friend was like, just name it coffee, coffee, coffee. I was like, I can't call it just coffee three times, man. And then my uncle was there and he was like, why don't you just name it Boon Boona Coffee? I was like, that works. And so that's kind of how it all came to be. But yeah, I'm not that creative.
Yeah. And so like the different coffees that you serve, how you come up with their names, right?
Hmm.
How's that
Oh, for
work?
which ones?
Like like Starbucks might have like Verona
Mm-hmm.
or Sumatra.
Yeah.
How you come to different names for your coffees that you serve?
So the way we try doing it is we try keeping it to where it originates from. So we try holding on to the name of the producer or the producing facility or place. Like we want to show that. So for example, Nova, it comes from Rwanda. The organization that produces it is called the Nova Limited Company. It's like from this organization, this group of people, basically. Another one is Bakanzo Joint, and so that's a co-op in Congo. It's like so want to reflect who it comes from. We have two blends, um, and those blends have different names. One is called Beraka, and that's a medium roast, a true medium, which kind of has like graham cracker like sweetness to it. And we called it Beraka because it's right in that medium space. And Beraka also means the third round of the coffee ceremony, the traditional coffee ceremony. And Beraka, in its just what the word means to be blessed, basically, or a blessing. And that's where we applied kind of a different word to apply to the coffee outside of what we would typically do of having it just named after, like, this is Jason's coffee.
Mhm.
And the other one is called Jebana, and Jebana is a little bit more of a medium dark roast because when we do the Jebana, the traditional coffee ceremony, it's a little darker of a roast. And it's brewed in this clay pot, which is very much traditional for us. And so we call that one the Jebana blend. And that was more dark chocolate, kind of bittersweet chocolate of a taste profile. And so that's kind of how we come up with the names, but we try not to deviate too much from like the person that brings it there, or that we're buying it from.
On a daily basis, how do you decide how much coffee to make, right? Like I'm sure you have a system based on previous customers and previous stuff. Like how you decide day to day, like, make a, I don't know, like a gallon, 2 gallons, whatever the measurement is, how you decide that to make sure you don't waste stuff, so to speak.
Well, on that side, our approach is that we want to provide like the freshest coffee possible. And so only when you place an order do we begin to start to roast it. And so,
I want
um,
some of this, are you good?
sure, yeah. We only roast as you if you order, and
Okay.
so
So you don't have like a gallon of
we,
coffee in the back waiting.
yeah,
Okay.
no, no,
Okay.
no, no. We wouldn't send it out like, you know,
People order, you make it right
yeah,
there.
we won't have like a stash of like coffee just sitting on
Okay. Okay.
shelves and then say, okay, use that stuff from 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
No,
So
no,
not like you make coffee on June 1st and you start serving June 5th. Like
nah,
it's
nah. So
okay.
we'll use
I always
like,
wondered about that.
yeah. So what we'll do is that, okay, cutoff is Monday at 7 a.m. And so the team will look at all orders that have been, sent in and then say, okay, hey, we're going to start producing this. They'll produce it on Monday and ship it out by Tuesday. And so we try keeping it to as fresh as possible that way. The only time you'll find maybe an exception to it is where it's a wholesale customer or a customer that's going to be using that coffee immediately or consumption on their espresso machine or for drip. Because with coffee, not necessarily is the freshest stuff, like the stuff that just came off the roaster. It's not like bread. The freshest stuff is not usually the best stuff. You need a little bit of time for it to degas.
Okay.
And so it needs about a good, 7 days for it to degas. Um, and then you'll send that to the customer. But that'd be the only place, and it's only because of that kind of necessity for it to kind of like sit before you start using.
And do y'all sell bags of coffee also?
Yeah, we do. Yeah,
Okay.
we sell retail bags of coffee. Yeah, yeah, 12 ounces, 4 ounces, and 5 pound bags.
And you mentioned wholesale, so you have like grocery stores and different stores to buy your coffee wholesale.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, yeah. There are grocery stores um in the area that do, and so a few grocery stores that do carry it uh around here for us. So
Cheers, my friend.
cheers. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. Honored to be here.
So
It's good.
thanks. So you know how in wine they have like a like a wine expert, or whatever, or wine sommelier.
Yeah,
Is there something like a coffee sommelier where like they're expert on coffee and something like that? Is that something that exists?
there is. Yeah. Uh, we refer to them as Q graders, and Q graders are folks that have taken the time to go through basically it's almost like a week long exam, and in that time they are smelling, tasting coffee, and uh, determining or being having to identify like things like where it was sourced from. Like this came from Colombia, this coffee, just by the smell and taste of it. This came from Colombia, it was roasted like this. Oh, I find a defect. I think it's this type of defect. Oh, the roast did this and that. Their ability to be able to identify things within the coffee, and how well they do in that process is what gives them a pass fail grade for it. And then they carry that Q grader uh, you know, badge of
Yeah,
honor for sure.
yeah,
And so there is the equivalent of a sommelier for coffee. And actually, coffee does this weird thing where not weird. It stole a lot from the wine industry. So, like for example, there's a flavor wheel, which it's based kind of came from the wine industry, and that's applied in coffee. And so we'll look at that to be able to kind of determine flavor notes. So when you see flavors on the bag of coffee, um, it'll refer to, you know, blueberries and
yeah,
things like that. It's not that things have been added to the coffee. Just that it resembles those things. Like those are things that you can kind of, it reminds you of it. It has that taste in similar to wine where, you know, you put same thing. You put blueberry and chocolate and stuff like that. It's not that those things have been added to the coffee. It's just or to the wine. You can just
yeah.
you can things that resemble it. Yeah, it resembles that
So
flavor.
I'm gonna change subjects real fast.
Yeah,
So, what do you do for fun? Like, what do you do for fun? What are some of your hobbies that you do?
man. Right now, it doesn't feel like I have too many hobbies. I mean, honestly, I've been so much on the grind. I think that has kind of lost it. I do enjoy going for a jog. I do enjoy getting outside. It's just, you know, about the time right now, commitment and stuff like that. But, you know, a good hike. We're so fortunate out here that, you know, having, you know, you just drive 20 minutes, 30 minutes and you're, you know, right underneath the Cascade Mountains and just like doing a nice little hike. You know, it's beautiful, it's perfect. And especially as the weather gets better. That I love reading too, and audiobooks, especially these days if I'm just driving around. Like I love good audiobook as well. And I'll jump between fiction and nonfiction, depending on kind of where I'm at. But those are probably like the things that I love. And then, you know, something that I've always been big on is definitely traveling as well. And so from an experience perspective, you know, more than, you know, kind of like buying things for myself, you know, I really love to go and experience and go see different cultures and experience it. And to spend time in those places and spend time with the people, is something that I really, really do enjoy. I love hanging out with
Yeah, I love
people.
traveling too. From my point of view, like maybe agree or disagree, but like I've never had a bad travel experience, right?
Mm,
I don't care where I went to, what the country was. I've
yeah,
never had a bad travel experience, you know?
I could, I, I almost see that. I think that, yeah, the experience of just being there and seeing that thing, that experience, like being in that space is definitely is very rewarding.
Yeah, and
It
things
definitely
you
feels
can't go somewhere
good.
to stay in the hotel room, or you got to get out
You got to
and
get
it's
out. Yeah.
you know don't eat the hotel restaurant. Go maybe
Nah, nah,
walk
nah.
like 6 blocks to get some street
Yeah,
food.
yeah, exactly.
Now, are you taking the risk? Yeah, probably are,
Oh
but you
yeah,
know,
yeah. I mean, that's yeah. I've many a times done that where it's like, oh man, I wish I hadn't done that.
yeah.
Yeah, and that is fun. That is
We
fun.
did it in Vietnam. We just so the place in Ho Chi Minh City is like basically a mile long, but nothing but street seafood, right?
Yeah,
So me, my friends, we sat down, ate. It was so good, right?
yeah.
But next day we was all like, all of us, even the people like they're from Vietnam. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you gonna pick that one, right?
That's hilarious. I've had it where there's a traditional dish which is like basically like beef tartare,
Mm.
but it's like raw meat,
Yeah,
and it's a very common dish in Ethiopia and a little bit in Eritrea. But I had it at a place that, second, think about it again, is like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But yeah, I was messed up after that.
Yeah.
So basically it's like raw meat, raw beef.
Uh-huh.
It's like basically imagine, yeah, similar to beef tartare. And then spiced butter is added to it, and a little bit of beta, which is a spice,
Mhm.
is added to it, and you just destroy it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
I pretty
it
much eat,
destroyed me.
I pretty much eat anything. So in Vietnam, I'm eating snails, different stuff, eating
Yeah.
pho, don't know what's in it. But like next last day was at my friend's wife's aunt's uncle house.
Mhm.
This is my limit. I said I can't do this. They brought out a big ass platter of chicken feet.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I said I can't fuck with this. Like
It was too much for you.
it's too much. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can't fuck with no chicken feet.
yeah,
Everything else, yeah.
yeah.
Now if they would put chicken feet in a soup and hit it, I'll probably eat it. But it's like this on there. They would take the chicken feet, dip in kind of sauce, and
Yeah.
they was going to okay.
Yeah.
I can't fuck with that.
Well, yeah, we've got one for us. It's that I can't I've tried it for sure, but it's definitely tough for me to go for. But it's like sheep,
Mhm.
and so like it'll be what is it? Like it's stomach, not
I think you know
stomach,
what I'm talking about where
yeah, but
they put something in
basically
the
like chitlins,
put
basically.
something in the sheep's
But they
stomach or something.
no, not something inside of it, but it's actually its stomach.
Okay.
Like it's like, oh man, I'm what is it called? There's a name for it,
Yeah.
but like it's the inner part of the stomach, basically intestine
Okay.
and intestines and things like that. And so yeah, that one is a bit much for me.
Yeah.
We call it dulot,
Hmm.
and it's yeah, it's a little bit much for me. Another one is like tongue.
Yeah. I've had tongue before.
Yeah,
I
you
can
could
eat
eat
tongue.
tongue.
I can eat
Yeah,
yeah, cow tongue. I can eat cow tongue.
yeah, and
I ain't ate it like in 20, 30 years, but
yeah, I still kind of like, I'm like, that's a bit much.
yeah.
But for me,
That
but
me liver, I can't mess
can't
with
do
liver. I
liver.
can't do liver. Like,
What is it with liver? Is it that it's just like a very strong taste?
the taste, the smell,
The texture?
yeah, just can't do it. Yeah. I know people
Mm.
love liver, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it's supposed to
definitely.
be really good for you as far as like
Oh, it's
organ
supposed to
meat.
be very good
Supposed
for
to be
you.
very good. Supposed to eat like once a month or something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, liver does a lot for us,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I'll have to do without.
I, yeah, I'm trying to push myself a little bit more
Yeah.
because I think that especially when I travel, like I don't want to be that person where it's like, no, I'm not.
I'm going to McDonald's.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to McDonald's and traveling. No, that's that. No, but I definitely want to be able to be like, yeah, sure, let me try a little bit. Like I haven't tried snail, for
Mhm.
example, and I'm
It just tastes rubbery. It's like nothing. Yeah.
nothing crazy.
No, nothing crazy. Like yeah,
It's just things like that. It's like, yo,
just
like,
like snails. Yeah.
just go ahead and give it a try.
I mean, I've had
Might
frog.
be like coffee. I might be
Yeah.
that might be my thing
Yeah.
next. I'd be like,
I've
yo,
had frog legs before, alligator. I don't think I've ever had snake. I don't think
yeah.
I've ever had snake. I have people say snake is like, of course, everything tastes like chicken, right? Supposedly.
I had in Australia, I had kangaroo meat,
Oh wow.
and that was interesting. It was very rubbery,
Hmm.
but it had kind of like almost like a pepperoni type of
Hmm. Okay.
look and feel and taste to it
Yeah.
too.
I've
It
never
was
think
rubber.
about eating
Yeah,
kangaroo.
yeah, marsupial. Was it marsupial? Yeah,
Yeah. Have you ever had elk?
I have had elk.
That's really good.
That's good.
Man, elk's really
Yeah,
good.
yeah, elk's good. Elk's good. And the way I had it was really good too because it was like in a in like a deep like gravy sauce
Hmm.
almost. It was
Yeah.
like, oh man,
Elk is really
it
good.
hit the spot.
So what's a place you want to travel to you haven't been to yet?
So many, so many. I want to spend more time on the continent. So more recently, like our coffee director Ali,
Mhm.
he's gotten to spend a little bit more time in Rwanda, and I want to go see Rwanda so
Yeah.
bad. And I want to see Burundi. I want to see um, West Africa. I want to go spend some time in West Africa. So
So my daughter,
Senegal, Ghana,
yeah, my daughter, her
Cameroon.
husband and my son-in-law is actually from Kenya, right?
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And just bought a house in Kenya.
Oh, good for
So
them.
I'm waiting for them to invite me to come, because I live in Dallas and Grand Prairie, the Dallas area.
Huh?
They go like every two, three times a year. So I'm waiting for them to invite me to come over there with them, right?
Oh, that's beautiful. That's
So I
great.
can take the place out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, especially if you have somebody there too, like then you get that real
Yeah.
experience,
The
that real
yeah.
exposure. Oh goodness, yeah. Don't yeah. You may need to nudge them.
Yeah.
If they haven't
Yeah.
sent the invitation yet,
Yeah.
yeah, I just nudge them, be like, hey,
Yeah.
what's
Like, give
up?
me that. Yeah.
When can I come with you guys?
Yeah. I know, right?
But
Eh,
no, to go to Kenya,
Yeah.
that'd be awesome too. Yeah. So I'm ready. I'm ready for any travels on the continent.
I'm with you too. So next, talk about how you take care of yourself, either physically, mentally, spiritually, or any way you want to define taking care of yourself.
Taking care of myself definitely comes in a lot of different ways. I think that first is the mental space, and I think because I am constantly going, and definitely things are on my mind, and wanting to feel on top of things. There's a heavy kind of burden I feel for that. Not a burden in the sense that like I feel it if I haven't done it. So like if I've got a list of to-dos and I haven't got to it, that feels heavy. And so I like getting to a place where it's like, all right, those things are completed. But like by the time like I kind of look at it as like my week as well. And so like beginning part of it is busy, it's heavy. There's a lot that needs to be done. But by the time Friday comes, I need to start calming down, bringing it down. And Saturday, I want it to be a little bit more relaxed. And Sunday, definitely a day where I'm just focused on family and hanging out. And so I think about my mental kind of like exercise throughout the week in a manner in which like I can kind of I'm not just running full throttle the whole time. There has to be a some kind of cadence to it. So I think about it in that state. And then, really, especially with the little one now, it's kind of like having not gone to the gym. And it's like, I went for a run yesterday and I was so sluggish, but I felt good just simply doing it. I think about things like that. I'm like, yo, that it was such a relief. And even today, I'm like mentally like, oh man, I got that run in yesterday. It wasn't that great, but it was good. I can't wait to do it again. Like if I can find time again tonight, I'm gonna try going for that run. So there's things like that. So that exercising, that physical exertion, um, is definitely a lot of. It really helps me kind of stay fit, but stay mentally fit. And I think it kind of helps my full, kind of full roundedness of where I'm at. I think about those things, and then of course diet and other things as well.
So talk about something like when you first started your entrepreneur journey, like way back, something when you first started being an entrepreneur, that back then it pretty much kicked your ass, right? You can figure it out. Like, man, I'm struggling. The day you look back, like, what was wrong with me? That's the simplest shit I could have figured out. Why did it take me so long to do this?
I kind of feel like that about a lot of things, and it's kind of crazy. I'll even use that example here now. So right now, I'm actively working to kind of have to we have two roasters now. So I want to get one certified organic. I want to make one of our roasters dedicated to just certified USDA organic coffees. And it's something I've been thinking about forever. Oh, I just need an extra roaster and I can have some certified organic coffees. We have a lot of coffees
But
that
is the
are.
coffee already organic?
That's the thing. So the coffee is organic, but if you roast on a machine that also has non-organic, then it's not organic anymore.
That's weird.
The roaster, everything inside of it, and that was the thing. This is where I'm kind of getting to with it because I found out more stuff. But it was like the thought of like, oh, man, if I could have that extra roaster, have certified organic stuff completely. Some of these coffees are definitely organic. And it's like it'd be a great thing to just showcase that and speak to that. But if I don't have that license and if I don't have that dedicated roaster, I can't do it. Come to find out that there's a purging process. I'm gonna find out that the process is definitely there's a lot of details and there's a lot of nuance to it and there's a lot behind it, but it's not as big as I had made it out to be in my mind. And in my mind, I made it such an obstacle. It is a process. I'm not trying to knock the level of work that you have to do for it. It is a lot of work. But in my mind, it was something much greater than I had than it actually is. Similarly, like because I'm thinking about kind of certifications and things like that. But there's a B Corp certification that we got, which is really about like, environmental sustainability and, just different factors by which you operate your business off of. Do you donate? Do you give back? What do you do? How do you buy your coffee? Do you buy from war torn countries and, things like that? And this organization, B Corp, they do an audit basically to make sure that you're doing the things that you're saying you're doing. And it was a process. It took a year to get the certification. But in my mind, it was 5, 10 years of an experience, like it's going to take forever. Um, it still required a lot of hours of documentation, providing documentation and things like that. But I think about my journey and I think about things at the beginning, even, and what was like such a huge obstacle becoming something that is doable. I think the only thing it requires is just persistence and I'm gonna get it done mentality, which is persistence. But I mean, that was only it took time to get to that place.
Here's one for you. So I think most entrepreneurs they go the phase like, man, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. This is too much for me. I'm struggling. What the fuck am I doing? When you got that point, how did you like, be resilient and get past that point, so to speak?
I'll be honest, I still do that now. But I've had conversations with other entrepreneurs. One in particular, the most recent one was with Rodney Hines, who's the owner of Metier Brewing Company. And Rodney has just been an incredible, guide and resource and just good friend, good brother on this journey. And I've once I picked up the phone, just calling, checking on him, and I was like, we were just talking about just different things. We were both kind of like in the same space. So he asked me a question. He was like, Efrem, would you ever think about like stopping what you're doing and go back to corporate space? And I thought about it. I mean, it's my brother, so I'm gonna think about it. I'm not just gonna be like, hell no, or yeah, definitely. No, no. I'm gonna consider it. And so I thought about it, and I mean, there was a little bit of a pause and like, no way. No way. Because it's not so much my thing against the corporate space. No, there's a lot that I gained in it. But what I'm doing right now feels so fulfilling to me that even on the hardest of days, I'm only thinking about how I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna work to try figuring it out. I may not figure it out, but I'm gonna try
Yeah.
working to figure it out. And so I think about, challenging times and which we've had plenty of it, and especially in the last few years. We went from, new business, new retail business, at least in 2019, to the pandemic started in 2020 and not really seeing us get out of it until like probably second quarter of 2023. Um, so, and I mean, to an extent, even a little bit still now, there's certain things from the pandemic that we're still feeling. Um, and so I would say that hardship is part of the journey. I think it's about, how you navigate through it, um, your level of commitment to whatever it is that you're doing. And yeah, I mean, that's it.
Yeah, sometimes I'll joke around. Am I being resilient, or am I just too stupid to admit I need to stop?
I'd agree with that
It's a
too.
it's a fine line.
I
It's a
definitely,
fine line, right?
it is a fine line. It is a fine line. Yeah. There's definitely, yeah, I definitely agree with that.
So what happened, or what time period was when you were like, okay, this might actually work? Like before you're struggling, what am I doing? Like what happened? What year period was like, okay, this might be it. This might be how I make my living the rest of my life.
Um, I don't even know if I've still gotten to that point. I think that there are certain things that, milestones, where I can look at and be like, oh, you got there. You got to that thing that you said, would take forever to get to. You you reached that milestone. You got to that point. And so you should keep going. Um, and so there are those things of acknowledging um different points where I acknowledge like, oh, definitely be proud about like where you've gotten to. Um, but I don't think there's been a time where it's been like, oh, I've hit the mountaintop. I think of it as like you're on the right direction. You're on the right path. Um, you're fighting hard. Keep fighting. Keep going. Don't stop. It's that. I try keeping it even keeled mentality, especially emotionally. So like I don't get too excited, even when something good does happen. And I don't get down on myself when something bad does happen, which, I think in the first few days, I mean, when I was just on the build out and in the build out and, opening up the space and, you know, every day there's probably been a little bit of both. And some days, of course, more of one than the other, but trying to stay emotionally cool, so you can problem solve the best at least that's how I problem solve better is by keeping a cool demeanor about like, okay, Jason's running at me. He's got this crazy like issue happening, like something just broke down or something just exploded. All right, take it in and start problem solving, not necessarily reacting, um, and then letting my emotions take over. So, you know, so to your question, honestly, I'm probably not doing a good job of answering it, but I still don't see myself at that point, and I still see myself kind of working on that path, to get there.
What needs to happen for you to say, okay, I've made it? Is it like, get a car by Starbucks, have like coffee shops, across the United States, or or it would be always like be a never ending journey, so to speak. You'll never think you've made it, so to speak. You always be like trying to get the next step done.
Nah, none of those things, honestly. It's not cafes all over the U.S. or getting a sit down meeting with Starbucks or anything. There's nah, I wouldn't say any of those things necessarily would do it for me. It's um, it's truly about doing the thing that I set out to do and doing it well. That's it. And so, um, I wrote the business plan back in 2012, 2011, and last year, the team and we all spent time, like leadership team, just spent time like looking back at what it is that I had drafted then and saying, are we applying the things that we're saying that we're going to do now? And I'm grateful to say that yes, a lot of the things that we spoke to then, that I had drawn up then, are the things that we are doing now, but not 100%. I think there's still room for a lot of improvement. And so I I feel like there there is a spot, there is a time, but when or how, I'm not 100% sure yet. Um, I think it has to do with, are the producers doing well? Who we're sourcing from? Are we contributing? Are we doing something really good there? Are we like building schools? We're making an impact there. And not to say that we're not progressively like doing certain small things, from our capacity, but how much more can we do? Our team across the board, how are they from a compensation, from a lifestyle, are they satisfied? Are they happy? Do they believe in the mission? You know, what about the community that comes into the cafes or that buys our coffee? Are they satisfied? And not to say we're going to be able to hit all those marks, but I'm going to push the bounds of things that I want to see done to get us as close as possible to where we're hitting that. That's my goal, really. And I love the saying of nail it, then scale it. Whatever it is you're working on, just nail that thing, and then maybe it allows you to move to the next thing, progress. But yeah.
What's your process? You hire people to make sure they're like customer service friendly, customer service experts. What do you like? How do you make sure that they're like really good on customer service? What's your process of making sure?
Yeah, I mean, so this is where I had a lot of learning. This is where a lot of growing happened. So, when I first came in, the first time I ever hired anybody was for a job for Boon Boona. And I was I was I had so little experience in that space of recruiting, making sure the talent is right, of interviewing. Um, I was coming at it from the side of like, yo, do you like coffee? Can we be friends? Let's work together. which is great, but it may not be the best thing for both sides, for the business. And so, there was a lot of learning, a lot of growing that happened to now where I would say that, I still recognize I probably recruit based off of like, oh, Jason's a great guy.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man,
Yeah.
come hang out with us.
It don't mean be your best marketer, best salesperson, best coffee person, best, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And I know that that's my weakness.
Some people make that
You
mistake
know,
though.
I love getting to know people. I love like genuine like this conversation we're having right here. I enjoy this.
Yeah.
This is what I enjoy
Mhm.
about engagement.
Yeah.
Like, you know, um, but I think then what I learned was that I need to find somebody that can do that really well. And I brought on my retail general manager who has a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge, and knows exactly how to do that very well. And she has taken the lead and has done phenomenal at it. And the more that I'm part of like the side of like cultural of like what it is that we're trying to accomplish, great. On the quality and what it is that we're trying to, the caliber and like the customer experience and what it is the job entails and things like that. She nails it as well. And so it's it allows for that. It's like everybody who's good in doing it, having them a part of that process. And so between our managers at the cafe, retail manager, or general manager, and then myself engaging as well, we're finding really great people. But additionally, also, I think from a coffee side, like, you know, we try being very intentional too about our recruiting. Um, we recognize that, yeah, you can have somebody that's had, 5 years of experience working in a cafe. Um, but that might not produce the most diverse staffing system. If you're going to have requirements of like, you got to have so much, true for certain roles for sure. But I think that, certain things can be trained, taught, and so we try being intentional about getting diversity inside of having a diverse team. Um, and and so our recruiting has been in that manner too. We've we're working with a lot of different organizations in the community here in King County that do a lot of like training, customer service training, barista training, and then through that, that becomes a system like uh, a channel by which we can recruit from some talent. And so, Goodwill Evergreen does that. There's a organization called Safe, which is based on kind of like helping folks who are coming out of sex trafficking. And so there are organizations just doing great work in training and, trying to, present candidates out there who who are looking for an opportunity like that. And we're seeking that as well. So yeah,
So let's say you hire a barista, entry level barista, right?
Mhm.
What could that person's career path be? Is a path for them to go from entry level barista to maybe being a manager, or like how's that work for your people?
Yeah, we definitely want that. We want that. We really desire that because one, I definitely believe in like internally growing people, getting them up uh to experience that type of responsibility, to take on that responsibility, then stepping into that space, taking on getting that compensation, getting all of that comes with it as well. And we would love that. And so we have had folks go from barista to roasting. We've had folks go from uh, really barista to managers as well. And so we love seeing that. And we believe that in our space, we have a little bit more of an opportunity in that because we roast, we source our own coffee. There's many different positions inside of the business. It's not just barista um, that folks can go into. We produce some food items. We produce our syrups. There are other areas in this that one can go into. So if that interest is there, we want to be able to kind of fuel that. There's an interest for them to compete, taking our coffee to like a competition or for them to, become a, champion latte art you know, artist, that's something that we also want as well. And so those are just some things that we definitely consider for sure.
So let's say suppose y'all hire someone. How long does it take you and your senior people to figure out, okay, we just hired Mary Jane. Mary Jane got some freaking potential. Like she's a superstar. Or I don't know, maybe you should have hired Bob. Bob's like, we made a mistake on Bob. Like, how long does it take you to figure those two things out?
We we're not quick to make that call, really. What we want to do is allow that person to continue to show themselves, And so we'll continue to coach them, guide them, answer questions for them, help them, uh, get more training for them as well. I feel that like uh, a responsibility of leadership is to provide support. And so to
But
provide,
what's the time limit on that, right? You give them 3 months, 6 months, because like obviously, if someone's not performing and you still working the job, everyone's gonna look around like, man, Bob's still here. He don't do shit. You know?
yeah, yeah. I mean, we definitely, you definitely get the Bobs or whatnot that don't do shit. It's just having the conversations like, hey, these are the expectations, and you're either not meeting them or the burden is falling to your teammates, or management, to have to do it in place of you because you're not performing. Is there an issue? Is there something that you need some training on? How do we support you? Those conversations happen, and that'll happen pretty frequently. And then, we'll be like, all right, well, we want to see some improvement and give it some time. And if we see improvement in good direction, great. If we see it go back into that same place after a little bit of time, we'll have a follow-up conversation about that. So we try approaching it where it's like at least like two or three conversations and then saying, okay, hey, we're gonna have to put you on a performance improvement kind of plan. We want to see you do this. Come in timely, you know, no more than 10 minutes late, for the next month.
Yeah.
Can you do that? Can you hold to that? Um, it's things like that, and setting some clear expectations for the improvement to be, for everybody to see that, or for management to see that, to like, okay, hey, Bob is improving, or Bob, hey, I don't think this is a good fit for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. So you have four owner operated cafes. So four owner operated, does that mean you're doing a franchise model? Like four different people own the cafes, or what does that mean?
No, it just means that they're ours.
Okay.
Like there are spaces. We have
So
a
you
lease.
have
We
like
have managers. That's our
okay,
team.
okay,
What we do is we do a lot of wholesale too, right? And so we sell our coffee to a lot of places that use our coffee. So the space may be branded Boon Boona. Um, and so that's where it's not a owner operated. It's just a wholesale, a partner of ours. And that's kind of the differentiator. But
okay.
when we're staffing it, then it's ours.
And then it says that you have 10 cafes and corporate offices.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how that worked out for you? Like you just reach out to like, I don't know the companies, I'm like Microsoft, Amazon, like different corporations, like do like a sales pitch or whatever, or how that come about?
It's kind of crazy, but the timing of that all happened back in, probably January of 2021, and we were approached, and I think there was a time where, like, one is like, how long is the pandemic gonna last, and things like that, and what are we gonna provide for an experience for, our employees when they come back, and there was, one, of course, the intentionality behind, who we're bringing in, but then also the experience that we're trying to provide and the quality. And so, we were approached by, the first one was Amazon. And it was like, hey, we have these spaces that are at the, ground level of our building, and we'd love to see, you know, if you guys have an interest in that. And like, yeah, we'd love to, love to explore that.
Like ding, 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 like hell yeah.
Like, let's definitely go about that. Yeah. And similarly, like, it was like a week later, we received a similar kind of like call from Microsoft too, and it was like, "Hey, would you be interested?"
So why do
We're
you
like,
think these
"Yeah."
people reach out to you? Because I know you did a lot of social media, like you did a lot of pitch competitions. You put yourself out there. Do you think that was part of it, or you think you're just lucky, or just how? What do you have anything to put your button on? Like, man, this is why they reach out to me.
I think it's multiple reasons. I think first it kind of came back to, I think it was the timing, right? Uh, to think about like, okay, 2021, where were we at? We had a pandemic. George Floyd was the summer before his murder, and intentionality, but then combined with like, okay, what are we going to provide for an experience as well for our folks that are coming back in here? And yeah, you can have the same old cookie cutter, like, type of cafe experiences that, are most places, or you can provide something that like people are feeling, excited about, which is, more local, more intentionally sourced, kind of coffee and something different. And I think those are some of the factors for sure. Um, and I think that's why we were hearing it. But then also, I would say that we got to that point uh, where we were competing. Really, we were competing up against several others. I think for one of them, there was probably like there was a lot of competitors for it or whatnot. But what we tried doing was just showing, hey, this is how we source. This is how we roast and brew. We do it here locally. We do it this way. Here goes the experience to taste it and to try it as well. And I think that also resonated. Um, and uh, we are, I would say that like one thing that I try doing is not putting the cart before the horse. And so I really want to be able to deliver on the things that I say I'm going to do. And so, we worked hard on our end to make sure that we were prepared as well. And so we wanted to make it as smooth as possible. We wanted to be responsive as possible. We wanted to be, you know, service orientated. So we wanted to be able to provide any kind of training, any kind of support that they needed as well. And I would say that we also showed up as a team for those opportunities. And we're still trying to do our best in those opportunities. Not we don't take any of that for granted. Um, and I think those are just some of the factors. I don't know if there's not one thing. I think that there's several factors that needed to happen for it to kind of come together like that.
So when you're in like these spaces, like the Amazon market, do they get a cut of your sales? You have to pay them rent. How's that business model work?
We, for the most part, provide our coffee wholesale it to them, no different than we do to a bakery or another cafe. It's the same.
Okay.
Um, they've been great partners in that space for us to make it all happen. And, since then, now it's grown into other places or whatnot. But no, I mean, it's no different than anything else. They're not expecting more, or they're not expecting like, oh yeah, you got to do this because we're no. I think it's been definitely a very like it's been a great experience. Like because if you think about it also from like the side of like as a small business, right? I don't have the means by which I'm going to be able to recruit more and hire more people. Um, you know, it's already pretty, as a small business, like margins are already super thin. It's very tough to operate as a small business. Um, and you throw in pandemic, you throw in inflation, you throw in, you know, costs just increasing on every front. It's it becomes very tough. And so having opportunities like that really do help in kind of like the business kind of finding some support really. And so yeah, been very fortunate for sure.
So I'll make this up. Like talk about inflation, right? Do people come to you say like I'm totally make this up? Uh, man, this coffee used to be $2, now it's $5. Do you like explain, hey, inflation costs go up, or you just like kind of like blow it off, like, hey, either you pay, or you don't. Like, what's your approach to that?
No, I think it's no different than the approach of like, coffee experience, right? Like somebody that's like used to drinking like a particular type of coffee or, whether it's sweet or whatever, however they want to drink it. And it's like they come and they're like, oh, do you have this drink from the other cafe? Like, no, not necessarily, but we do have something equivalent to it. Okay, all right, let me try it. Same with, when it comes to the cost of the coffee as well. It's like, hey, why is it? And I love that question too. It's like, why is your coffee going to be more than another roaster? And I'd probably say, like, honestly, it's not like it's probably on par with other specialty coffee. It's not going to be more or less than another specialty coffee, but it's probably going to be more than that of like the general, like, the more abundant coffee roasters out there. Um, and so why is that? All right. That's a great question. So it's providing the answers for it, you know. So this is who we source from. We pay fair trade. We pay above fair trade. We pay put a premium on it. We donate another something on top of it, whatever the case may be for that particular coffee. So we're paying more for that coffee than the big dogs. That's one side of it. Two, it's a higher quality also. So there's a quality difference that we want people to experience. Um, that we're not gonna give up on for, you know, price. So those are some of the factors, and maybe there's other reasons as well. Okay, it's also organic. You know, provide understanding. I think that that's the biggest piece. If you can provide uh, an understanding as to why, then you're more inclined to, right? It's like no different than you know, than the whiskey we're having right now, right? It's like, you know, we could have a lesser brand. But the lesser brand is probably not going to be as tasty, right? It's not going to be that experience. It's not going to be the experience as that. And so uh, that's okay. I understand that. You know, something that you wear, something that you drink, something that you eat. It's the same. And so it's the same within coffee too. I think historically, what's happened probably in coffee is that it's definitely been something that's, you know, be honest about it. It's like, yo, just take it for granted a little bit. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I got coffee. It's great, cool.
Yeah,
Coffee is coffee.
we've come a long day since the days of Folgers.
Yeah. And so taking it from that point to where it is now, that's, you know, that's a big change. That's a lot of change, right? You know, you go from, you know, beer even or even in wine where it's like the dominant players, right? And then now you get to a place where it's like you've got microbrewers, you got
Mhm.
brewers on different like right within walking distance, you've
Yeah,
got a brewer.
yeah.
And so you can get, you know, 10 different varieties of coffee of beer. You know, it's like, yeah, it's like I get a lager, I can get my IPA, I can get my stout, I can get my porter, I can get all these variations of it. And it's going to be different than the next person down the street that brews beer because their hops are different, because their grains are different, whatever. It's like, that's fun. That's beautiful. That's great. And I think that, you know, coffee, it's taken some time probably here in America more so, but it's at that place or it's getting to that place. And I think the more the consumer is more aware of like, oh, there's an IPA and there's a Pilsner, the same thing happens within coffee. And
So you have
so,
four cafes, correct?
mhm.
And do you like do competition where you say, hey, this quarter, whatever cafe increases sales, increases profits, or increases any kind of metrics, gets a bonus or anything like that, or anything like that that you do?
No, we haven't applied any kind of like a competitive kind of like like amongst the
Mhm.
cafes. One, I'd say that there's a healthy nature to that for sure. I think though for where we're at right now, being so new, you know, two of the cafes opened up just last year. I think it's a great opportunity for us to kind of just dive into culture,
Mhm.
experience, making sure that the team is sound, feeling good. That's more important right now. That's super important. And I think that the focusing on that, how do you improve? If anything, I'd be like, how do you improve the experience for our guests and for our team inside of the cafe? Be my metric, you know, that'd be my metric. And that'd be the thing I'd love to
So
see
how do
more.
you do that? How do you like Google reviews, Yelp reviews? Like how do you measure the customer experience there in your cafes?
Yeah, I think there is definitely, you know, you do look at reviews a little bit for sure. You don't,
Or you have to use a grain of
you
salt,
gotta
right?
use a grain of
Because
salt
some
for
people are
sure.
fucking trolls.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. You know, but I think that there's some validity in it too. But I would also say that, you know, what's the feedback from the team? You know, what's the team
So many
saying?
people forget that.
You know, what's the team saying? Hey, Efrem, you know, we should be doing this or we need to offer that. I think this would work well in this space. Um, okay, hey team, yo, why aren't we having enough events inside of here? Who's in the community that we should be opening our
Do
doors
you still do
to and
your
do
poetry
things?
nights that are one and written?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Okay.
We had it last Friday. It
Like
was great.
it's still every Friday night, right?
Not every Friday night. It's the first Friday of every month.
Okay. I thought it
First
was every
Friday.
Friday for some reason.
Yeah, no. At first Friday of every month
Okay.
though. And it's great. It's great. We love it. We also have the library that comes through, reads books and sings songs to kids. We do it in two different languages, honestly. So there's the English version, and then there's also now a day where we do it in Tigrinya and Amharic, which are the dominant languages of Ethiopia and Eritrea. So you get, a little bit of exposure to a different language.
So
Uh,
real quick, is there can it be too early to drink coffee? Like, can you be can you drink coffee 8, 7 years old, or is that coffee drink like beer? Like, should be 18, 19, 13? Like, is there like if somebody said, hey, someone brought your kid like at 4 years old drinking coffee, like, hey, what are you doing, right?
yeah, I mean, I would, I think that's to each household because I can speak about mine. I can speak about some of those that I hear from like different cultures. Um, here it's not too often that we hear about really young kids drinking coffee, but I do know that like in different places of the world, like you may have a cup of milk and then they'll put a little bit of coffee in it.
Yeah,
Um, and that's normal.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
not frowned upon or anything. That's not
yeah.
yeah.
I could be wrong. I think my oldest was drinking coffee at 13 in Italy.
Yeah.
She's drinking like not
Uh,
coffee, but like I hate to say fake coffee, but she's doing some
uh,
kind of coffee, some frappuccino,
yeah.
something at
That's
13,
yeah.
14. Yeah, but
That's the exposure.
we're in Italy though.
Yeah. And I mean, and I would say that like for me growing up, I probably wasn't invited to the coffee experience until my college years.
Yeah, I was in my 30s when I started drinking coffee.
Yeah. See? I mean, I probably say like I started drinking coffee really. The first time I remember having coffee like an experience was probably like my freshman year of college. And that was me going outside and be like, yo, I think, well, I've heard that coffee helps you stay up. So, all right, if it's gonna help me stay up and I got a test tomorrow, I'm gonna drink it. It didn't work for me. I still bombed the test, but I tried it. I was like, and that's when I remember like at least starting to drink like syrupy sweet drinks.
Yeah.
I want to say nothing wrong with that, but that's when I got my first taste of it. And then when I'd visit like my family, when I visit my mom, and then she'd be like, "Hey, do you want coffee?" I'd be like, "Sure, yeah." That was probably like in my college years.
Cool.
Yeah, a little
So
bit
back
more.
to the customer service part, like how you make sure you have customer service good. Like, how's the process for that?
Yeah, yeah. On that, I think it comes back to training. How are they engaging? What is experience like for our guests? The essence of it should be grounded based off of the traditional hospitality, the approach of East Africa. So if you come into somebody's house, whether in Ethiopia or just in East Africa in general, you're going to be offered tea, coffee, food, something. We want to provide that same, like, yo, welcome in. This is your space. You're a part of this community. Um, and we want you to enjoy yourself, enjoy coffee, hang out, relax, spend time here. That's what we're seeking to do. And at the essence of it all, like that's what we want. We want to provide that kind of experience. So it's a form of hospitality that one would receive coming into, you know, my mom's brewing coffee and you're coming in as a guest. You're gonna be like, Jason, here, let me hook you up, relax, do this, we got you. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're trying to get out of our team and, want to make sure that we're communicating kind of like that 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 history and that tradition to them so that they're aware of like what we're looking for.
So let's suppose you have a customer named Lisa Johnson, right? Are you able to track Lisa Johnson comes in like 3 times a week, 4 times a week? She comes 10 to 11. Are you tracking stuff like that?
We don't analytically, but as a
I mean,
barista, as a team,
hopefully
yeah,
baristas know,
are
right?
starting to build. Yeah,
Yeah.
they build that relationship. They become aware of the cut of our guests, and that happens. Yeah, that happens. Yeah,
And where are your 4 cafes? I know you have one in Renton.
yeah.
Where are the other cafes at?
So Renton, that's where we got started. Capitol Hill was our second one. That's on 12th and James. And then our third one is in the U District on University Avenue inside of the University Bookstore. And then the fourth one is inside of Microsoft's campus in Redmond.
Okay.
And that's the newest one.
So talk about picking those locations, right? Like why I've been your one in Renton, right? Like why that corner of Renton? Why these locations? So I'm sure there's a like research process went to it, like why those places were just like why Capitol Hill and why
Yeah.
Capitol Hill versus Belltown or Pioneer Square. Like I'm sure there's a lot of thought process that went to those things.
I wish it was that sophisticated. I think that it's necessary to be that sophisticated for sure. There's definitely value for sure in it. But this is how it all played out. I'll give you kind of that journey. So back when I first thought of this, I thought, I need to be in Seattle. I need to be in Lower Queen Anne and, a very high dense population. Um, that's where it's going to make the most sense. I couldn't afford that. That was the reality. I couldn't afford it. And I was looking and, I just, it didn't make sense. I didn't have the money for it. I didn't have the means for it. My uncle owns an auto body shop. He's a mechanic also, uh, in Renton. And he was like, Efrem, you should come down to Renton. Check it out, you know. And so we go together, I remember, and he was like, look at this spot, that spot, like call him and call that person, the landlord for that and that. And I was like, all right. And I started thinking about it a little bit more and started having some conversations with some of the landlords there.
The spot in Renton is great. Like there's plenty of
Uh,
parking. It's a really good spot.
yeah, it is. It is a great spot. At the time, this is 2017, it wasn't, it didn't look too promising. It was folks drove through Third Avenue in downtown Renton. They drove around 405 or whatnot, and if it got too busy, they'd just drive straight through downtown Renton. They wouldn't really stop really all that much. And so I was like, you know, maybe this might be an opportunity. The building had been vacant for some time. There was one tenant only in there, and so I was like, maybe talk to the building owner, and he's like, yeah, we'd welcome you in here, and it just worked out. I could afford it. It was, Renton is, it borders Seattle, but from downtown Seattle to Renton, you're probably talking about 20, 25 minutes without traffic. Um, and so there's it's some distance, um, but I could afford that. Like that, and even that I could barely afford. To be real with it. So it just worked out with that one. And I wanted to go big inside of there. I wanted to have our roasting facility inside. I wanted to have full cafe experience inside there. I wanted to have the traditional coffee ceremony inside there. And I want to have tons of seating for people inside there. I want to create a community in there. And so that's how that one happened. And by chance, that first year, we definitely struggled, but it was improving. And by the time we got to the top of 2020, we're like, yo, we survived. We survived our first year as a small business, which, high percentage of failure. But we were so excited and just fortunate for that. And I remember then, I was doing a lot of classes at UW and at SU as well, but I was taking some classes at
So
UW.
wait, so you starting your business and going to school.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you like the fucking glutton for punishment, I'm guessing.
Well, I mean, the truth, the reason was only because I felt like I didn't have enough experience to be an entrepreneur. Um, I felt like there was so much that I didn't know and wasn't prepared for, and
So no one said, "Hey, man, like you got a lot going on. Maybe you don't want to go to school."
I probably had folks saying that like, "Yo, you're doing a lot,"
Yeah,
but
like you like
you couldn't convince me otherwise.
okay.
I was no, I started my MBA program the same day I opened up that Renton Cafe, and then that same week I also
That's
started,
insane.
yeah, and so I started my MBA program at Seattle
Okay,
University, and then I started my a program with UW, University of Washington, for it's kind of like not even really a certificate program, but it was called Ascend, and it was with the Foster School of Business and Michael Verschow, great leader in the community, great leader at UW, and he was the one that was like, this program kind of gets you around like other small business
yeah,
owners and a cohort, and I just found it super beneficial, and so I was like, but the reason I was doing that was because my career had been someone who was in finance. And so I felt good about finance and accounting
yeah,
stuff, but I wasn't good at HR or
yeah.
managing or, marketing, all the other areas that, an entrepreneur should probably have some understanding of while they're running a business. And so, it was from that side of it that I was like, okay, like I needed, maybe I can get some information, like I can learn something in the classroom theoretical that I can apply into the business as I'm working on the business. And maybe that kind of gives me a little bit of understanding to avoid some of the pitfalls. So that's why I did it all. But then, so I did that for basically the whole year. And then by the time I got to 2020, the top of it, I was like, all right, like we may need to open up a second one. We should probably open up a second one because we're roasting coffee, but if we're producing it, we need to have places to go put it out into. And I asked, there was a program at UW that started up where it was kind of like working with students to, they basically take on a project for you. And so I got connected with about six of them and great students, great folks. And I asked them, how did we succeed here in this particular location? How do we do it again? And that was my question to them. And so they had to start researching, where a second location would be at, what it would look like, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. And by the time they came back to me, they had a 70-page research paper and, locations mapped out. And, they had done surveys inside of our cafes and provided all this information. But this was now April of 2020. I'm deep in the pandemic. I stopped school. I stopped. I was like, I'm only focusing on surviving as a business. And they're like, hey, Efrem, we're ready to present our findings to you. And I was like, yo, you can email the findings to me. I'm not, I've got to work. And I felt bad for sure. Like, like I couldn't, engage in their
Yeah.
day of
Yeah.
presentation, but I mean, I was knee deep and I was just trying to figure it out. Like at that time, we had to put most of our team on, um, what is it called? Not furlough, but we had to kind of like, like it was like a suspended period or
Mhm.
whatnot. And so it was like yeah, I can't remember the term that's used, but it wasn't like we laid them off. It was just kind of like, yo, there's a pause
Mhm.
basically. And then they were able to kind of get like benefits or whatnot. But yeah, so I was like, I've got to figure this all out. Like I can't. But then they told me, and I read it and stuff. But we put a pause. So by the end of September of that year, a friend of mine was like, "Hey, yeah, you know, he has a bagel business, and bagels were doing great inside the grocery stores during the pandemic and stuff." And so he was like, his dad was like, "Hey, like." I asked actually, I was like, "Hey, how's your dad doing?" Because he owns cafes. Oh, he's selling them. It's like, oh, damn. I was like, that's too bad. And he was like, yeah, I know, but at least he's able to do that. And I was like, you know, are there any locations still remaining? Like, how much is he selling them? Like, my mind started kind of going in that place. I was like, he was like, yeah. I mean, give him a call. I was like, all right. And I know his dad. And his name is Ali. He's the owner of Cherry Street Coffee House. And so I give him a call, like, hey, Ali, how you doing? I'm sorry to hear. He's like, oh, it's okay. He's a very positive, really good guy. And he's like, I was like, do you have any more locations that you're looking to, sell? Like, yeah, I've got a few more. I was like, all right, like which ones? And then he tells me like the one on 12th. I'm like, I love that one. I was like, that's the one that of all of his locations, that's the one that I would go to. I was like, how much are you looking to sell it for? And not that I had money stashed up either. Like, it was like more of like, maybe, maybe maybe there's a way, just ask though, find out. He's like, um, come by, come see this space and let me know. And the next day, I go see it and I give him a price. Or I did some research based off of the list of things that he had available. And I was like, hey, here goes the number that I'm coming up with. He's like, increase it just a little bit more. I was like, all right. And then he was like, we had a deal. But that wasn't just the only thing. He also vouched for me to the building owner to allow me to have a
Yeah.
lease. So he, as a business, yeah, true, sold me like the equipment in the space or whatnot. But the building owner also was like, like, who are you? Like, you own a spot in Renton and, you're trying to expand during the middle of a pandemic, like crazy. Like, that's wild. And so he vouched for me. And so Ali was the one that really kind of was the one that supported me to get to that second location. And that's how that second one happened. It wasn't based off of the research UW had done, which is great research too, and they, valid points, but it was the opportunity at the time. Last year, we opened up, like I said, two more locations. But and what I'm getting to basically is the fact that it's not the research that I had done, but it's based off of the support and opportunities just coming and us being prepared, but really the support of a community.
So your four cafes, all basically the same size?
No, they vary in sizes. Uh, Renton is our biggest. Um, Capitol Hill is our second biggest. Uh, the Microsoft location is a little bit big, and then UW.
Can you talk about the process, like how you went about designing the space, like deciding like where to put tables, chairs, like the aesthetics, all that kind of stuff? Was there any thought process to that, or did somebody else do that for you? How did that work?
So I struggle with like that side of things for sure. I can think of things that like operationally, like what's needed from a flow, and yeah, we probably need to do this and that, and there should be a sink there, and like very practical. And when I was opening up our rental location, it was a good friend of the family. His name is Yegi Michael Yugzal. And Yegi is an artist, well known in the city. He's done a lot of projects, great work. And he's of Eritrean descent, and grew up in Ethiopia. So he's very familiar with like culture and everything. He's a great, great human being. Um, and I remember talking to him like, "Yo, Yegi, I'm opening up a cafe in Renton." He was like, "What? Oh, great." He's like, "Where are you at in the process?" I was like, "Oh man, I'm just starting to beginning." He was like, "Oh, like, can I come and see it?" I was like, "Yeah, come through." I was like, "When you're available." He was like, "Come by now." I was like, "Yeah, all right." He comes by and he looks, and I mean, at the time, there was no drywall even on the walls. It was just empty. I think the framing was just starting to be built for the outline of the cafe and the space that I was going to use. And he just was like, "What are you thinking about doing in here?" Like, "Oh, I want this, this, and this, and that." And, like, all right, well, what are the colors and schemes and this and that? And I was like, "I have no clue yet." It's like, all right. It's like, I think you should warm up the space. I think you should, look at doing this, and I'll put a mural up here that's that, and you can have this and that and that. That sounds expensive. He was like, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. He's the one that kind of put the look and feel to it, and it helped in communicating what it is that I wanted for the space. And so he was able to take the things that I was wanting to accomplish and brought it to life, basically, in a way that kind of showcases that art, that showcases that story and that tradition. So it's a lot based off of Yegi. True, yeah, I found the tables and chairs and things like that. And as we went, even when we found, like Ali's Cherry Street location, like there was definitely like certain things, elements that were similar to our Renton location. And then Yegi helped out there as well. And he's probably had a touch of his stuff in each of our locations. Um, and then our third location, UW, that was done with a little bit more assistance from Yegi has a mural inside there, but also La Union Studio, which is headed by Sergio and Sonia, who are the owners of La Union and great architects. And they helped kind of provide a little bit more. And so, from tables and chairs and the whole look and feel and such, and incorporate the work that Yegi does and things. And so now they have familiarity with who I am and what I'm about. And crazy enough, like back in 2019, when I would see them in the cafe, we'd joke around and be like, "Hey, one day we'll get to work together." And by chance, we were able to do that. And so that's kind of how it's all started coming together. I think that there's still kind of like a general look and feel inside of Boon Boona's, but it's also still in a form of kind of being refined too.
So in 2022, you won the SBA Small Business of Person of the Year. and you also like you're one of the Pacific Northwest Small Business Person of the Year.
Mm.
From my point of view, if that happened, yeah, that should be like indicate, okay, I might be on the right path, right? What
Mm-mm.
is that something you get nominated for? Like you have to compete for? Like how does that work? And what are the benefits of you receiving those things?
Yeah, you get nominated for it. And then you do compete. So there's a panel, I believe. There's a committee that has to review everybody that's been nominated for it throughout the state.
Like who nominated you? Like how does that work?
The person that nominated was actually someone who was like a mentor. She is a mentor. She was a mentor at the beginning before I even started up. And Susan is her name, and she's got her PhD in in business and she's a champion, and especially within women small businesses. She's a big leader. She's just incredible. And she works through Business Impact Northwest, but has her own as well. But I was connected to her when I was competing for. Uh, it was kind of like a small business, incubator program basically. And so you present what it is that you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it, and you get assigned a mentor. And by chance, Susan was assigned to me, and we just built this relationship. And she was like, I sent her my business plan and numbers and all that stuff, and she helped me refine it and competed there in 2018 for it. And we won it as a community leader. I can't remember the exact title of that one, but we won then. And I continued on always reaching out to Susan. And she was just someone who I could always go to, like, hey, I'm running into this. I'm trying to figure this thing out. What do you do about this? What should I be considering here? And so someone I always just kind of, if I ever have a question, I can just go up to her and ask her. And there's been many people like that, but Susan was the one that, she was seeing kind of how I was moving in that first year, and then, you know, what I was doing in the pandemic and trying to, you know, keep ourselves going. And so she was very much like a person that I was reaching out to and asking for guidance. And so she was like, you know what, Efrem, I'm gonna put your name in the hat. I'm gonna do this. And she did. And, you know, and then there's other folks that are doing the same. And then I was selected from the group. And then from that group, so then I won it for Washington State. And then from Washington State, then the same thing happens for the region. So that's for Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, Washington. I want to say one more. But yeah, I think there's one more state maybe
I think
involved.
Alaska.
Yeah, Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. I
Yeah.
think it's those four. And then amongst them, I won then. And then I was brought up to like basically the national. And so, it's like one of 10 basically for the nation. So yeah, it was an honor. I was very grateful for it. You know, I still didn't feel like, to your answer to your question, I still didn't feel like, oh, I've reached the mountaintop. No, or like, yeah, I'm there. No. I still had imposter syndrome of like, no, like,
Yeah, I don't think that ever goes away,
yeah,
unfortunately.
I still felt like, dude, now I've got this burner on my back. I'm small business person of the year. I got to figure out how to maintain
Yeah.
this business, otherwise it's all for nothing. So it's still like, it's a lot. But I was very grateful. There was definitely a lot of like, really, really kind and very generous kind of, you know, work that was done, gatherings. There was the mayor and, different leaders in government that came and visited and, acknowledged the work that I've been doing and such. And definitely very thankful for it for sure. But no, still.
Can you talk about the importance of entrepreneurs being humble enough to ask for help? I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't want to ask for help or the ego, whatever. Can you talk about the importance of being humble enough and getting rid of your ego to go ask for help when you need it?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that, dropping ego in entrepreneurship is definitely very helpful. It helped me at least, and something that I still work on. I'm not definitely there. But I think that when you drop your ego and you're willing to ask for guidance, support, I mean, it's so much better. It's so much better. It definitely. I mean, I honestly, I wouldn't be here without like all the mentors and folks that I can reach out to and ask for, answers to questions. Um, you know, definitely, if just simply saying I don't know is a great place to start. Because and I don't know, then you can kind of get to a place where like, okay, someone can help you. Even if you do know maybe some certain parts of it, it's like they can kind of fill it out for you, give you some examples, guide you in the right place, introduce you to somebody that can help you. Um, that's where all that happens. Um, and then, I feel like ego is a burden. Ego is a burden for sure. Like, I mean, you gotta keep this facade up of like, oh, you're perfect or something, or like you've got it all figured out. It's like, why? It's so much easier and so much more helpful for sure to be like, oh man, Jason, what do you think of this? I'm trying to figure this out. How did you earn all these badges? Like, that's incredible. How did you earn that? Because that is incredible. I don't have a single one of them, and I'm gonna be talking up to you and be like, yo, nah, Jason, you don't know anything, or like, I need to be like, yo, obviously he knows something, he's done something. So I think of it as that, and whether recognized with uh, you know, something that we carry or something that we receive or a title that we receive, I think that most people, everybody can provide little guys. And I mean, honestly, sometimes, yeah, true. Not all advice is good advice. You definitely
So
have to be
true.
a filter.
So true. So true.
You filter it out. I do try considering it. It's like, okay, let me consider that. Hey, Efrem, like you didn't do that. You should have done this. Okay, let me think about that. Oh, but this is why I did it. You can say that. Like, I don't mind. Like, oh, but this is what I was in. This is the situation. That's why I was thinking about it that way. Oh, got it. I see what you mean. Yeah, I was in the weeds. You're thinking about it 30,000 feet up, and I can see why you thought that I should have done that versus this. There's, it's all beneficial. It's all gonna be for something that's gonna help you. So, I mean, I think great quality is definitely the
So
key.
like, as you know, lots of small business failed during COVID. Why do you think you like was able to like, survive COVID?
So I would say this is that I think if I just look at like the steps that we took or whatnot, I remember that Sunday, like March 15th to 16th or something like that, 2020. And I remember the rule coming in of like, yo, stay in place. And it was like, all right, what does that mean? And I remember sitting in the cafe and I was with my uncle, been one of my biggest supporters throughout this journey. And I was like, what does this mean? What does this mean? What am I supposed to do tomorrow? And and I remember like making phone calls to like try finding out like from the health department from, like I don't want to get in trouble. Like I'm trying to figure this out. Like how do I avoid getting in trouble? Like I do not, if I operate the business tomorrow in a way in which they said you're not allowed to, then I'm in trouble, like for sure. So can somebody explain this a little bit? Because this is very confusing. And I think that was the place that a lot of small businesses were at. Because we didn't have like a legal
Yeah,
team or
yeah. I
anything like
definitely
that
think
to
small
figure out like,
business took a unhealthy balance of the stuff going on. Right, they got hit way harder,
yeah,
unfortunately.
for sure, for sure. And depending on resources, financially, can you handle it? Language, whatever, different factors for sure. You were definitely at a disadvantage, uh, or you had a little bit of an advantage. But in a small business perspective, it was very hard, and because we don't have the resources, most of us don't. And so I remember just saying, okay, I think we can open up our doors and we'll just put a table at the door. We can't let people in, but we can take orders. So let's bring the point of sale over to the table at the front of the door, create a line that's outside,
Mhm.
and we'll just go run and make the drink and come back and bring it out for folks. I think that could work. Started doing that. And I remember in that first week, like that Monday, it was okay. The Tuesday, started to go down, like the number of people coming by and visiting were less. And I remember by Wednesday, folks being like, what's going on here? What are you guys doing? What are we doing? What's going on? What's It was like this like awakening that was happening of like, yo, like I don't know, but this is what I'm gonna do so I don't get in trouble. But then also like, yeah, these are the new rules or whatnot for engagement. Like, and so it's like everybody just kind of like swallowing, like, okay, this is our reality now. And by Thursday, it was clear, like it was like a ghost town.
Yeah.
It was getting real, real. And I remember saying, all right, I'm gonna have to think about this. I'm gonna have to talk to my peers. I'm gonna talk to other my mentors. I need to figure out what folks are doing. And what happened was that a good friend of mine, the owner of Hood Famous Bakery, Shara, she was the one that um was like, yeah, this is how we're going about it. I was like, oh, okay. She had already figured it out, like, or figured out what best to do. And I was like, and because I look up to her, I'm like, all right, well, okay, all right. It's gonna be some tough decisions, but that's that was the start of it. Like, and that was just us saying, like, yo, reality is that there isn't enough traffic, and I can't afford to be able to pay for everybody and
Yeah.
not have nobody come by. Like we were seeing 20 people in a day. And most of the team was like, just like watching. It was just there was nothing to do. So I was like, all right, like this is reality. So we shrunk down. Uh we helped everybody like try getting information to like sign up for unemployment and everything else and all the other benefits. And then we were basically trying to figure it out like as to what's stabilization is going to be like, okay, so what are our expenses, what is our revenue right now, and say, okay, how do we maintain that then so we can stay open. If that just means me working the door, I'm going to do it the whole time. And so yeah, I was working every day for pretty much 2 years basically, like as a barista, just doing it. And so in that time though, within about a few weeks, I think it was our coffee director was like, yo, Efrem, what about subscriptions? Doing online subscriptions, having like, different opportunities for people to get our coffee. And so we're like, all right, let's do that. Let's dive into it. And so we started seeing our e-commerce grow. And because we roast our own coffee, we're like, all right, perfect. People are getting to drink our coffee now. Like, it's great. And so that became an opportunity. And basically, as the months kind of continued, we were able to find kind of like that stable spot for things. And that's really what helped us maintain, but no ways like doing great. Yeah.
Did like the city of Seattle or Seattle, Washington, or federal government, or any other organization like provide like financial assistance or any type of assistance at all during this period? Period.
Yeah. I mean, there was definitely like it was tough trying to figure it out, but PPP, um, you know, it was confusing. The money was like there and then it was gone. And you need to, which bank are you working with and things like that. It was like, oh my God, like it was a
I remember
nightmare.
PP. A lot of people criticizing like the Los Angeles Lakers basketball team got PPE. Shake Shack got PPE. All these big corporations people like, are you kidding, right?
Yeah.
And are you all just horse or a small business like putting in for like and they can get it right?
Yeah.
It's meant for me. I can get it. This Los Angeles Lakers got how the hell did that happen, right?
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
insanity.
that was definitely very frustrating for sure because,
I couldn't imagine. Yeah,
I remember it was like, oh, like, hey, it opened up, all the money's gone. And, it's like,
yeah. I remember without
what?
we got it on TV. Like Los Angeles Lakers got like first of all, why the fuck the Los Angeles Lakers put off a PPE? Are you kidding me right now? Right?
Yeah. And that was definitely discouraging. That was definitely very hard, you know, because every day was a real challenge to be able to keep going. And yeah, I mean, what do you do? So you're like applying for grants, you're applying for anything, and just trying and hoping. And even to do that, right? Like that's even in that, that's a bit of a privilege, right? Like if you're the sole you know, employee and the business owner and you're just working, you're cooking in the kitchen and also, serving guests. when do you find time to then
Exactly.
fill out um, forms that need to be submitted as soon as possible the minute that it drops? Because it's basically like a lotto ticket,
Mhm.
or it's not even a lotto ticket, but it's like first come, first serve. And if you're not on top of it, you don't get it. Like that's, only if you really could find that, you know, that opportunity to be able to go like, oh, let me go fill this thing out. And sometimes it'd be like, at a certain point, you're like, the next 30 minutes, 45 minutes, hour, whatever it is that it's going to take me to fill this thing out, I could have been producing more food, taking care of more guests that would have impacted me immediately right now. And here I am rolling a dice on something that I don't even know if I'm going to get or not.
Like playing, like I said, playing on the lottery ticket.
Yeah. So it definitely felt like that after a while because it was like, do I even have a chance on this? Like, there, it's like, hey, here goes a fund of $1 million, but it's gonna be provided to like everybody in the state of Washington can apply, and there's 3,000 businesses that are gonna apply for it. It's like, all right, well, that's
Million divided by 3,000 ain't a lot of money.
it ain't a lot of money,
Is it really worth the
and it's like,
honey
so
up?
now is am I gonna really spend my time doing that? Like, so there was a lot of like, um, I think there was a lot of folks that were also like, it's, uh, it's not worth it possibly, like I don't know if I should invest my time in doing that and filling out for these things. So there's a lot of people that got jaded, just tired of it, just really just like, uh, I'm doing this and high likelihood I'm not going to get it. So why even do this? Yeah.
So, what advice you have for like brand new entrepreneurs? So, like early stage, have an idea, they're like doing the business plan. What's your advice to them?
Um, I think it's the same one that I wish that I could have applied to myself, and I think is, just being kind to myself, a little bit more grace, a little bit more patience on the journey that would be ahead of me. I think that I so wanted to be at the point of where I had a location, roast my own coffee, and have a cafe space, and da 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 da, stack it, all the things that I wanted to see. But in reality, it takes time. That was a 7-year journey for me, from where it was an idea to then reality. And in those 7 years, I was tough on myself. I was like, yo, why aren't you there? Why haven't you gotten there? And just stressing myself
That's
out.
something I suck at, right?
Yeah.
Like me, I've always been like this. Unfortunately, like if I did, suppose I do 10 things right, nine I do outstanding, right? I'm fucking like superstar status. The 10th thing is like average, not
Yeah.
not horrible, just average. Like I fucking kill myself in the 10th thing. It's just
Yeah.
average, right? And I try to work at it. I just fucking I need a lot of work on that.
Yeah. And I still say that like I still do that a little bit, but I've definitely been a little bit better of like also recognizing that that's a shortcoming that I shouldn't be so hard on myself like that. Because you're doing it. You're living it. You're working on it. You're progressing every day with it. You just have to acknowledge that you're doing that. Like, don't be so hard on yourself. It's like, yo, you are doing it. And if it's something that you believe in, and that's another thing I would tell, it's like something that you believe in wholeheartedly, like nothing's gonna deviate, like nothing's gonna take you off course from that. Like if you believe in it and you want to see it come to life, you're gonna do it. Nothing's gonna throw you off. You're gonna stay true to that mission. You're gonna wake up early and be excited. You're gonna stay up late and be excited to keep working on that thing because that's your passion. That's what you're passionate about. And you want to see that thing manifest itself. So whatever that is, whatever form, that'll happen. The only thing that I would add to that for any, entrepreneur coming in or small business is that it benefits somebody outside of just yourself. Think about who it can benefit, so whether it's where you're getting your product from, who's making your garments, where you're sourcing your cotton from, who you're buying your crops from, to what kind of space you're providing, organizations that you're working with. It's got to be much more meaningful than just it being a financial reward. That's it's got to be. At least that's how I see it. I mean, I think that, you know, I enjoy volunteering because I want to support something. I want to support something that doesn't have any meaning behind, like, a financial gain for myself or for the person that's putting it on, except for the cause of what it is. And hopefully it's for doing something good. So it's like, I want to see something good come out of it. It's like, let's see something good. And I think if it can have something like that, kind of how I speak to Boon Boona about it, or what I try putting for Boon Boona is like, it's a socially conscious for-profit business. So being conscious about like, how you're engaging in your community, how you're engaging in supporting and sourcing. Yes, it's also a business that needs to be profitable. It needs to sustain itself so that you can hire more, you can recruit more, you can, pay more, all those things as well. So I think those things, keeping that in kind of mind.
So, lack of a better term, how often do you share your face at each one of your four cafes?
Woo, sometimes it's not as often. It isn't as often as it should be, but I'm in Renton more often. I'm in Capitol Hill probably second, and then Microsoft and UW.
Kind of waiting.
Yeah, it's like yeah. And
You're
so
like,
like sometimes they'll be like, Efrem,
y'all,
can you come by?
y'all got it. Y'all got it. I trust you.
It's not so much that. Like, I mean, yes, I do believe that they all independently. I don't go there with the intent of like, yeah, I need to go check on them and da, da, da. Check on them, like check in with
Yeah.
them.
How you doing?
How you doing? But not like, yo, you know, you missed your milk order, your coffee is, not tasting. No, like there's enough trust in them that they're gonna do that. But it's more of like just to go spend time with them, honestly. And I think that that's sometimes like where I wish I got to do a little bit more. But I think that just comes with like at the same time, like as we're, executing all these things right now with everything that we've got going on, is just a little bit too busy for it, but it'll come back and that'll happen. But, yeah, the reality is not I'm not there every day of the week. But I do have a great leader who is there every day of the week. She is having meaningful conversations with the team, and I can at least hear from them that way.
So, talk about the East African community in Seattle. Because it seems like there's a pretty strong East African community in Seattle. Can you talk about that?
For sure, yeah. I mean, the community is pretty good size, especially for being in the diaspora. Like probably one of the top 10 probably um, cities with both Ethiopian and Eritrean communities here. And most started arriving in the 70s. So kind of around the time when I was saying, people were leaving as war was increasing. So, that community, the community is pretty big, and you know, you'll see it kind of reflected in many different ways. But of course, in places that you eat at, and places that you frequent, for any kind of like traditional experience of that, community centers and places of worship. So they're here, and then it's obviously it's complex, and it's in how things have kind of evolved and changed for sure. But no, it is a very big community, and one that has intentionally been also very supportive to see. I'd say that there's a desire to see places like Boon Boona succeed and to grow. And we had started our entire business based off of the community as well. So we were, you know, first thing was in sourcing just the green coffee and providing that for the East African community. And so we were placing that in the mom and pop grocery stores throughout King County since 2014, basically. And so very familiar with us and what we've been doing. And, you know, also just having grown up here and know so many of the members in our community, like they've been very kind and very supportive as well of me as an individual, just to see me kind of continue on this path. And I've been very fortunate for that.
So, you already talked about your company some, but now can you like do a deep dive, like talk about how it got started, what you focus on now for your company, and what your big term vision is for your company moving forward?
Yeah, so the company, it got started in 2011 based off of that trip. And I came back and basically for 2 months, I just worked on my business plan. I was like, how do I, how do I go about this? What do I want to do? And I put together a business plan, few 12 pages or something like that. And I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to accomplish and things like that. I took it to a few banks and they were like, nope. And this is the end of 2011. So, I had been traveling for about 6 months. And so when I came back is when I started doing that. And that took about 2 months and then pitched it to a few banks. And then by end of 2011, it was like definite no. And so by March of 2012, I said, you know what, I'm going to incorporate and just get it established. And I started reaching out to family in Ethiopia, like I said earlier, and just started sourcing and working on coffee that way. And really, I spent that year just R&D, just learning more about coffee since I knew I'd have to bootstrap it myself and figure out my own path. And if I really wanted, I'm gonna have to, yeah, well, I have to figure it out. But by 2013, I think it was really the fact that my family was starting to see me play with coffee, and they were like, "Oh, like, hey, can I get some of that?" And so I started providing it. Like my mom, she would start doing it, the traditional ceremony, and so she would use my coffee, and she was like, this is better than the coffee that I get right now at the mom and pop grocery stores. And so when you do the coffee ceremony, you're typically doing it with you know, other people. Uh,
How long does the ceremony last on average?
Minimum an hour,
Oh wow, holy shit!
maximum three.
So it's a big cultural, big like
It is, yeah.
it's like you're going all out, so to
Yeah.
speak. Okay, all
Yeah.
right.
And the coffee ceremony, and I'll break that down too, but basically you're roasting coffee, uh, you're grinding it, and then you're brewing it in a traditional clay pot called a jebana. And this is done 3 times. There's 3 rounds of it. But it's a form of hospitality. It's a great way to have coffee. Uh, it's what we conversate around the coffee ceremony. We're sitting in the living room, drinking it, enjoying it, seeing the entire process. There's transparency in the process, and for a new guest to kind of familiarize, hey, this is the coffee I'm using. This is how I roasted it. So all this is shown and part of the experience. But it's something that's been going on for 700, 800 years in East Africa, but we continue to do it in the diaspora. We eat together, but we also drink coffee together. And when we drink coffee together, that's when a lot of like the conversations and community building happens. That's when you get the latest gossip as well. So it's all that stuff. Um, and so that's who I was primarily providing it to was my community of East Africans who were using the ceremony, doing the ceremony. And by 2016, we started getting into roasting coffee. And so we had that same coffee. And I had friends in the industry. I was like, hey, could you roast my coffee for me? And that's how the roasted side of coffee got started. And by 2018, it was like, all right, I think I'm ready for now the cafe, the front end of it. Let's see about that. And at this point, I had been distributing green coffee to LA, the Bay Area, Atlanta, Toronto, Vancouver. And so it was just like different, you know, finding different outlets for it.
So during the process, how did you make sure like you kept patient, right? How do you make sure okay, you didn't spear the process? Like how do you like okay, like you said earlier, I'm point A, I should be point C now. How do you like do all that kind of stuff?
A lot of it was like still trying to figure out what method worked, makes sense. And so a lot of it was experimenting. And so, you know, a lot of losses, basically. Like, I mean, it would be the thing is it was low in kind of like the amount, like I didn't have to throw a whole lot of money at it. It was like honestly, even like $500 is how I got started, really. And so that $500 I could buy one burlap bag of coffee, and then I can, sell it in smaller amounts, in 2 pound increments and have that available. And that's really how it all got started. And so, um, you know, finding then outlets for it, or someone I could send it to and they receive a commission to distribute that, in that city and things like that. So it was like different models that I would try out to see what would work best, kind of be convenient, and also still some margin to be able to make and things like that.
And what's your vision for the company?
Oh, well, so the vision for the company is that it stands on kind of it's on 4 pillars basically. And so the first one is sourcing method, who we buy from, how we buy, how we bring it here. That's that's a very big part of it. That is from Africa. The second part is, in our cafes, what are we doing? How are we supporting our community? So what kind of events are we having inside there? How are we uh, engaging or educating, supporting our community? Or, pop up supporting other small businesses? Are we selling other small businesses products? things like that. What are we doing outside of our cafe? So who are we engaging with outside? What kind of organizations are they and what are they doing and how do we support them? So, it could be Fred Hutch, and it could be different universities talking to their students and having them come in and do. Last week we had UW students working on supply chain, and so a day where I'm speaking to them about our process and they're asking questions about it in general. But many different opportunities of engaging outside where, maybe it's something like, it's just having a conversation, but it's like the value of that. It's kind of going back to when I was a kid and I was talking about like, having that exposure to somebody in that field, and having somebody I could ask questions of, somebody that looks like us. So I always think about things like that. And then the last one, which is super, super important, is obviously the quality of our coffee. And we're coffee nerds. We're serious about our coffee. We take it very seriously. We want to have great product. We want to make sure that it tastes good and it's presented right, and that folks enjoy it. But it's those four things. And when I think about moving it forward, is how I move those things forward as well.
Can you talk about the journey of the coffee? Like, does the coffee go from East Africa on a train to Nigeria, then a boat? Does it get on a boat, East Africa and go, I don't know, somewhere else and get transferred? Like, can you talk about the process? I'm guessing if you ship a pound of coffee, you get able to track all across the way, right?
Yeah, when it comes to the movement of coffee, for the most part, like if it's something small, right? Like if it's a sample, then that could be DHL shipped overnight, flight. It's no problem. When you're talking about larger quantities of coffee for production and stuff like that, it's going to move on a shipping container, in a shipping container in a ship. And so, because we source from Africa, and yes, a lot of it is from East Africa. So a lot of the ports are going to be in East Africa. So Djibouti, and Tanzania are some of the more common kind of places for shipping. And so it'll move from East Africa, go down South Africa or through the Suez Canal and make its way here to the East Coast or West Coast or whatnot. And then you truck it over here.
You have to pay like kind of tariffs or extra taxes.
Yeah, you pay a lot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can, what we'll do is that we'll sometimes work with like a brokerage firm
Mhm.
like to help us move it, and there'll be kind of like a consolidated cost for it all. So like if you're buying, like per pound, they'll charge you, a certain amount for each of that. Yeah.
So what's the largest amount you've had shipped over one time? Like
For the most part, basically a container.
container, like one of those big ass shipping containers.
Yeah, shipping
Okay.
container. That's typically the maximum you can at one time
Okay.
is a shipping container.
Okay.
So that shipping container, if it's a 40 footer, you can get 315 or so bags, burlap bags of coffee inside there. So that'd be pretty much the maximum.
And so let's say 44 container gets here with the coffee, right? Like, I'll put this like the coffee, like how long is that coffee good for? Like, you have to like brew it within a certain number of months or years or days, or like, how's that work?
No, so when it comes to raw coffee, you have a little bit of time. Maybe two. Uh, Coffee doesn't go bad necessarily. It doesn't expire, but it does lose its potency, its flavor over
Okay.
time. And so having something that's like 3 years old, 4 years old for sure,
Okay.
it's gonna fade. But if it's in its green state, is different than when it's roasted. Because once it's roasted, it'll fade pretty
Like the
quickly.
time starts
Yeah,
ticking.
yeah.
Okay.
And if you grind it, and you just got ground coffee sitting for a month, it's even faster. So keeping it in its whole bean is better. Keeping it in green is even better. So it just kind of gives it more time. The more you process it, the more you break it down, the shorter its life becomes.
So is there a difference? Like, some people look to get little carrot cups, they do a carrot cup, put in there. Is there a really big difference like doing a carrot cup versus like getting the beans and grinding the beans yourself, having the machine and stuff? There's really different the taste between like a carrot cup pre-prepared versus like you actually like grinding the beans yourself.
Yeah, definitely is. I mean, true convenience, right? And sometimes you're pressed by convenience, right? That's why the invention of an espresso machine, right? It's convenience, right? To be able to press it and have a shot of espresso and get your caffeine in and out. I think that's where it came from. Espresso and its own name, it means that. Fast espresso. So similarly, yeah, like with these, brewing methods that are a little faster or a lot faster, you're going to have different outcomes. And the more time you can spend on that coffee, the better the outcome for sure. So if you can get the temperature right, if you can get the grind size just right, if you can, add water to it in a manner in which it's not too fast, too slow, but just right in a certain amount of time, it produces a different cup for sure. Yeah, then yeah, fast
How much
paced.
does the water matter? Like, suppose you have like tap water versus the hottest quality HCO you can find. Like, does that the water make that much of a difference?
Water definitely makes a huge difference. Yeah. Um, you have filtration systems to try keeping some consistency, but obviously every city has its own approach to water. And so that definitely plays a part. And so, if you have a cafe in Seattle and one in Miami and one in Denver, water probably tastes different amongst them. And, you know, the exercise is definitely trying to like get the filters just right to be able to do that. But it's, it is, it's the curveball
Yeah.
in it all, So and it's a big part, right? Like water's majority of what the cup is, but it's about the type of water and how it's coming through there too.
What's your favorite way to take coffee? You take a black, you put a cream in it, you put like, I don't know, some kind of flavoring in it. What's your, how you like your coffee?
So I love my coffee shoot, every which way, but okay, I'm probably better off just saying kind of how I had it this morning because I enjoyed it. Today was great. I came in to our cafe and I was like, oh, can I get that new single origin Rwanda? Let me get that Nova as an espresso, please. And team gave it to me and it was like so delicious. It was perfect. It was like, yeah, this is it. And then I also had a cortado,
Mhm.
which is espresso and milk. And then I had some drip, which is also delicious. Of the three, if I had to pick one, I couldn't because I love all three of them.
So how many cups do you drink on average per day?
Uh, I mean, some days, rarely do I go without having it in a day,
Mhm.
but that's only because more of like just like convenience or like, it's there. I'm gonna do it. But at least one, two, depending on if it's a day where, I've got to really like work on this espresso machine and
Yeah.
really fine tune it, or we've got new coffees that we need to try, or we need to try the production coffee. I mean, that can become like 15, 20, but you're tasting it. You may not
Yeah.
be drinking a whole cup, but you're having a lot of it. And so if there's days where I have a lot,
Yeah.
and it's sometimes where it's to the point where I've had so much, I've definitely not had water and I'm dehydrated. I'm just drinking coffee.
Coffee's water, right?
Sometimes that's how I treat it, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's what the doctor would say.
Hey, how often do you have to replace your equipment? Like how often do you have to like upgrade and like, replace equipment?
Some of the equipment lasts a very long time. So that's a good thing. I mean, if you buy good quality equipment and if you continuously service it, you get quite a bit of years out of it. But for sure, things fail. Our dishwasher failed the other day, and I'm having to replace pieces on that, or ice machine's not working today. I was like, oh, all right, what are you gonna do? Replace that thing? Oh, fridge is dying. You know, I've got an exercise today where I'm gonna be moving some fridges. So it's like there's always something, especially the more spaces you have, the more likelihood for things that need to be replaced. But like your roaster, your espresso machine, those should last a long time. Get minimum 5, 10 years out of your espresso machine. If it's maintained well, it can go longer. Uh, I think it's just about maintenance and what you're doing.
So what do you see as the future of the coffee industry in the United States? Is like think is be like still gonna keep on like everyone's gonna keep on drinking coffee? Or like what do you think the future is of the coffee industry in the United States?
I mean, coffee has been consumed, yes, for a long time. Could it change? For sure, it could change. But I think that the change would probably be in the sense of like, is it more automated? Is there more is there less of the higher quality stuff because that stuff is faded because it's not growing as abundantly? The cost has gotten so ridiculous that you can't afford it. And so I think those are some factors for sure that could play into uh, the change. But um, I mean, I think we really do enjoy coffee. We really do enjoy beer. We really do enjoy wine and tea. And so I don't know if consumption of beverages is going to fade. It's probably just the form in which we have it, probably that'll evolve. But I think there's different reasons and different experiences that we get from each of those things, and that texture and that flavor is something that we do seek out. Um, if you enjoy it, then yeah, you just continue to.
Do you think the day ever comes where baristas are replaced by AI barista robots?
I mean,
Robots.
shoot, I think that it's definitely it's more of like I think that there's it's no different than kind of in any industry, right? There's going to be some changes for sure. Um, but I think that, as cafes, I believe that there is a desire for a community within inside of a cafe. I think at least that's how I see it. Like that's what I want from a cafe. Like I want to go in there and I want to meet somebody. I want to talk to folks there. And so I think it's more on the engagement side of things, that I think it's going to become, that things, that's where that doesn't change, at least in some settings, um, because if you think about where, like historically, like cafes have been centers for community. We don't have too many of those places. And especially as some of the business models are changing to where it's like, just drive through, pick it up and go, like you we're gonna seek out those things because as humans, I think we do want to engage with one another. And so I think that that space is still gonna exist. And I think that the baristas have a big part in that role. And I don't think that, yeah, functionality, true, yeah. Maybe there's certain things that change a little bit, but I think the human experience, like we're gonna still want to engage with one another. That's how I see it, at least.
Efrem, is there anything else that I asked you that I haven't asked you yet, or anything else you want to talk about?
And we covered a lot, man. We covered a lot, and I mean, I enjoyed this conversation, and you know, getting to touch on so many different things. It's definitely, yeah, I'm super grateful that we got to do this. Yeah.
Thanks. Hey, can you give us your social media so people can reach out to you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So at Boon Boona Coffee. So Boon Boona is spelled Boonboona, and then Coffee. And that's the handle for Facebook, for Instagram, for Twitter, and then TikTok too. So yeah.
You have any events coming up, like the first Friday poetry? Have you had any events coming up people could
Yeah, we do.
look
We
out to?
have we've got so we just had the poetry night last week. We'll have it again next month. We do have the coffee ceremony that's happening this Saturday. We do have King County Library coming through, I think next Wednesday in the mornings, 10 a.m., 10:30, and reading books, so for youth, in our Renton Cafe. We do have a educational kind of like coffee experience thing that's going to be opening up here beginning of June. And that's basically where it'll be like a deep dive into like, different ways of brewing coffee. So French press, pour over, how best to do it, what to look for, what can come from it. And so those are some of the fun events that are coming up soon.
Can you give us any last minute wisdom or advice or anything you want to talk about?
Any wisdom, man? I'm still trying to get to that point, but just kind of words of uh, advice or encouragement, really, honestly, is to do something good. Go do something good that benefits someone outside of just yourself. Just try doing something good in your community. Doesn't need to be anything elaborate. Doesn't need to be anything crazy, wild, big. Just something small, even. But make an impact. Is all I can say. Oh,
Efrem, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it.
nah, my pleasure to be here. Thank you to the community, and appreciate this opportunity.
And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. Remember to be great every day.